record on the computer. All right, let's get to it. So we're going to create a project from scratch. We kind of have the steps listed here, but I'm going to try to remember them or maybe ask some of our audience here. So let me get to the right directory here. CD into lectures and sorry, get into challenges. All right, so let's create a new folder. I'm going to call it library, I guess. Django library, I think is what we're creating. CD into that. All right, and then bring up a coding window. Pop onto my other screen. There it is. Swap it over here. All right, let's get started here. A little bigger, maybe. All right, so I want to create a Django project here. I know we've done these steps a few times, but always good to get a reminder here. So Sean Furlong, I want to create a Django project. What's probably the first step I should do to get this started?
Create a virtual environment.
Yep, Sean's got it. Hopefully you guys are familiar with creating virtual environments. We can do Python-M, VENV, and then we want to give our virtual environment a name. Again, this is just to create a folder. I always go with .venv. You might have your own preferences, so don't want to detract from whatever you prefer. But yep, so notice when I type that command in, I got a folder here that has a bunch of stuff in it. Again, you don't really have to worry about what's in here. Just know that this is what actually, this is where all your libraries are installed for your kind of bubble for your application. All right, Michael Robertson, how do I actually start using my virtual environment? Oh, I think you're muted. Happens to all of us. All right.
You got to set that as your where you're working. So you got to do source, and then the .then activate.
Yep. Yeah. So source command, and then navigate to the activate script. So it's going to be in your virtual environment folder, whatever you named it, /bin folder /activate. So yep. So once I hit that command, notice my prompt is pre-printed with the virtual environment. So now I'm actually in my bubble. So I can use whatever libraries are particular to this bubble. Cool. Thanks so much, Michael. All right. That being done, let's get more help here. Let's go with Brandon Watson. How do I actually create a Django project? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, it should be Django-admin, start project name.
Yep. So I'm going to call mine library. I'm not sure what our tutorial page calls it. Yep, library it is.
You have to install Django first.
Yes. That was my bad. But if I tried running that, let's actually try running it. But you are right, I don't have Django installed. So Django admin start project. It's probably going to complain that it doesn't know what I'm trying to do here. Library that. Yeah, so it says, hey, I have no idea what Django admin is, and that is likely, or not even likely, that is because I've not installed Django. Yep, definitely forgot a step there. So let's install Django. Hit install Django. And then I'm also going to be using a Postgres database. So I'm going to kind of automatically install Cyclops PG2. So again, I'm doing multiple installations here, but that should not be an issue. So pip install Django and Cyclops PG2. That'll take probably 10 or 15 seconds. So we can reflect on life during this time. Cyclops PG takes the longest time, churning its wheel. Sorry, who was the one that caught me there? Was that Guillermo? Or someone else? All right.
It was me. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I can identify voices as perfectly as I wish. Okay, so yeah, now that we installed Django, we are free to create a Django project. I'm gonna go back to our previous command, Django-admin, start project, library. And then again, this period just kind of helps me with my file organization. It's not going to create nested folders, totally optional, but I always tend to default to that. All right, cool. So now that we created our Django project, there are 2 points of interest. One, we should have our managed py, and actually I'm going to delete my library folder because I want to name it with CRUD. That's just my preference. Oops. Delete managed py. So I'm going to create a folder, library proj, just so I know that's my project folder. This is where my settings file is, also URLs. We're not going to really worry about ASGI or WSGI, but they might be useful for other situations. All right, cool. And then I have my manage.py, which is our main entry point for our Django apps. All right, going on with your great support there. Seth Thomas, how do I create a Django app?
It's going to be a Django admin start app, and then the app name, which will be appended with app at the end.
Yep. So again, optional to do the appending, but again, for organization's sake, I think it's useful. Yep. So we could do it this way. Just to kind of reiterate, there are another way we could do this. So this will totally work. Let's actually run that to prove that it works. Yep. So we get a book app and then relevant files that we expect, such as models and tests and views. Alternatively, again, this totally works. You can do Python manage.py start app and then book app or whatever you want to call your app. So again, this is an alternative way to do it. I don't really have a preference. I think I usually lean towards the second way just because manage.py is used for everything else. But yeah, either way, we want to create an app for our Django project.
That doesn't build any relations between it. That doesn't do anything extra. It's just a different step.
Sorry, could you ask that again?
Does that build any relations in the settings file using the manage.py?
No, it does not do anything differently. We still got to go through the same steps of updating our settings. Yeah, good question. As far as I know, it's the same command. It's just a different method for launching it. All right, cool. Let's keep this going. Susan, what's another step that I need to do here at some point?
You need to create your database.
Yep, we definitely should. So I'm opting to use Postgres. So we'll create a database using Postgres. Let's name it Bookser Library DB. All right, so creating my database now. Jordan Smith, what should I probably do next?
Update your settings.
Yep. Excellent. You guys seem to be getting the hang of this here. So yeah, so I created my database. Now I want to go to my settings. There's two things I want to update in my settings. Let's do our database first, since that's the most recent thing I just added. So database defaults to a SQLite database, which still will work, but we're getting in the habit of using Postgres. One reason I believe we're using Postgres is because once we deploy this to Heroku on the web, I think that requires us to use Postgres. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong about that. But again, Postgres is just gives you more features in terms of the database. SQLite's kind of just like a glorified text file that provides database functionality. And then my database name in this case was library DB. Again, if I'm going too fast, let me know. I would encourage you guys to follow along, but totally your option here. So, okay, we created our database down here, called it library DB. We're telling Postgres, hey, we have this database. This is what we're going to use for this project. All right, so that is one of two things we want to update in our settings file. Was there a question out there?
One quick correction that needs to be made on the databases and settings. It needs to be PostgreSQL.
Thank you. You guys are great at catching those errors. All right, yeah, PostgreSQL is what I want there, not just Postgres. And then library DB is my DB name. Thank you, Morgan. Then we're going to go up to installed apps. We want to tell Django what apps are part of this project. So in this case, in most cases for us, we're just going to have one app. But again, you could have a series of apps here, or we might install third-party libraries that require an app. But in this case, book app is what I'm going to add here. That is the name of my app for this project. All right, so remember, two things we want to do in our settings. Tell Django what app we're going to be using, or apps if there's multiple apps, and also what database we're going to be using if it's not going to be the default SQLite database.
I do have a question. I'm not sure if it's super important or not, but that comma, the last comma, does it actually matter for the installed apps and then for the database?
No, I don't think commas matter here. We could definitely verify that, but no, I think for lists and dictionaries and Python, you could have a trailing comma. It's not going to complain. It is a problem in JSON syntax. So when you're writing JSON, you're going to be doing that more in React week. You cannot have a trailing comma. That is invalid syntax for JSON, if I remember correctly. But in this case, comma, you can leave that off. You could have it. I think some people prefer to have a comma just because if you keep adding stuff, it's kind of just already there for you. In this case, if I add something like new app, I might forget to add that comma later. So some people might say just add it right away. Makes appending a little easier, but your option. I don't really have one way or another, I lean. All right, great questions, great support there. All right, cool. So we updated our settings, we created our app, our project, our database. Should be good to go. I think that's pretty much all the steps we need to get this kind of up and running. So one thing you could do right off the bat, if you want to, is you can make your migrations, or you could migrate already, because Django has a few migrations already queued up, even though we've not applied our model. So you could do Python manage.py migrate. And notice that Django will spit out a bunch of stuff. Again, this is internal models to Django. There's nothing that we've done so far, but you can push that right now or wait later to do it. Okay. All right, cool. I think with all those steps, we should be ready to go finally. All right, so
I've got a question on migration. So what exactly is happening with make migrations and migrate?
excellent question, Lorraine. Always want to make sure we kind of understand the Django magic. So it's a two-step process when we are creating models. Basically, we need to stage those changes. So basically, we need to tell Django, hey, we made some additions or modifications. We need that to create like a script that we're going to run on the database. So when we make migrations, it creates a script. I'm not sure if there's anything going to be in here. Yeah, so right now there's nothing of interest that we can look at. Basically, when you run make migrations, it's saying, hey, there's new models, new stuff that needs to be added to the database, create a script for it, and that's what make migrations does. The migrate command is actually what pushes those changes and applies them to your database. So it's going to take your migration scripts and run those so that your database has appropriate tables and relationships and whatever else actually added to them. So the migrate is actually when your database is updated. The make migrations is just on the Django side saying, hey, we need to stage some changes to our database. Let's do this now, and then you can migrate at a future point.
Are they
Okay, so in this example, because I don't think there was a make migrations before the migrate call.
Yep.
All this stuff is empty.
Yeah, so
Like
I was able to run migrate, and that was because Django has Django has default migrations it already created. It's not something that we're looking at, it's internal to Django. So it had some staged database changes already good to go. So I was able to run migrate, and it created, if we actually want to look at it quickly, /d. So it created all these tables. This is nothing relevant to my project. This is just some default stuff. As Tom talked about, there's like a built-in user model. That's what the auth user table is. There's something called user groups. Again, all this functionality exists if we want to use it. So Django automatically creates it for us. It's not going to create it kind of on demand. It just does it because it knows we might want to use it. So it might be kind of overkill in terms of creating stuff we might not necessarily use. That's kind of just how Jingle works.
Makes so much sense. Thank you.
Yep, appreciate your question. Zach, did you have a question there?
I was going to ask if that stuff is pre-staged to be migrated, but you answered it.
Yep, cool. Yeah, so it is just default Django stuff, nothing we've done in terms of models. So let's hop out of PC pool, clear our terminal. But speaking of models, so I'm going to be trying to follow everything here, but again, I named my app books_app. Looks like this page has the name books, so hopefully you guys can pay attention to the differences in case I veer off. But we want to create a model now. So I'm going to copy this just to be consistent with the page here. But we want to go to our app folder, and there should be a models.py that already exists. I'm going to drop my books model in here. But again, we're copying and pasting. Let's always make sure we understand what we copy and pasted. So looking at this, again, we're creating a class. I'm going to name it book in this case. We want to inherit from models.model. So I copied some extra stuff there. Again, this is going back to our inheritance week. Hopefully you guys are experts in inheritance, or at least understand the concept here. Models.models has everything that we kind of want to use. This is what Django is relying on. We can't just say, hey, we want to create a book model. Django has no real idea how to work with this class, but it knows how to work with something called this model class, because that is what Django is built upon. We are simply extending that model class and adding our functionality on top of it. So that's why we need to inherit from models.model. Now we create some fields. So this is just the way, the syntax way. We're going to create class level attributes that are going to serve as the fields for this model. So again, if you kind of take this and reflect it back to a database, this can be a books table, and then these are going to be fields on that database table that are going to get created. So we're going to book is going to have a title. It's going to have pages. I assume we're going to add an author at some point, but it looks like not right now. Always remember, kind of just automatically add a str method. It's going to serve you well because I usually forget, but in this case, I just copy and pasted, so I did not forget. This is going to be good for display purposes. So we're presenting some content to our users or end user. This str method is going to present something more visually appealing than whatever the default would be.
On that, I know previously we were seeing that the repr method and str method were very similar, except for repr was actually a little bit more capable. Does that still hold true? Is there any difference here than there was previously? Or
Great question. I actually don't know. So let's make this a repr and see if this works. If it doesn't, we'll probably know why. But I'm pretty sure it should work. So I'm going to make that a repr. If you guys want to also, you can leave that as string. All right, so let's kind of continue on our page here. Again, if I'm going too quickly or if any questions pop up, please stop me at any point. So we're going to have a title field, pages field. Let's create a new database. We do that. Migration. All right, so it looks like we're ready to migrate. So let's do that. So again, this is a two-step process because we've added something that Django needs to be aware of. So I'm going to do Python manage.py make migrations. And now I saw some people posting about this and maybe came across this. You can put the app name in here. So I could do book_app, which is my app name. It seems like, again, I'm not sure why this happens. Sometimes if you just do make migrations, it might not pick up the changes. Now, if you run into that, it seems like people found some Stack Overflow answer or some resource that said, if you add in the app name, it'll kind of force Django to maybe look more closely in it. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes. I'm just going to run make migrations right now. If it doesn't work, then we do have that maybe workaround for us. All right, so in this case, it's creating a book model. That is what I would expect. Cool. All right, so we made migrations. Now we could migrate changes, manage.py, migrate. So let me just bring up a new window here. If I do psql library db. So if I do \d, again, at this point, I made migrations, but I'm not migrated. So if you look in your database, there's nothing that should have been added with your make migrations, right? These are all Django databases. But if I go back to my bash, run this migrate command. So this is what's actually being run. So make migrations created this file. This is something that you pretty much 99% of the time don't need to modify. I think on Thursday or whenever I did modify it for a special use case, but essentially it's just creating some script that Django is going to run. In this case, calling something called create model, doing some things. Again, I don't really know how it translates this to SQL, but behind the scenes, it is being converted to SQL. So this create model is going to, probably create a create table SQL command and then add some fields as you would expect with SQL. But again, we're not writing raw SQL. Django is doing that conversion for us. So when we run the migrate command, it's going to run the script and then internally somehow generate SQL for it. So now that I'm migrated, it ran my migration script right here. If I go back to my database and do a \d now, let's do a \d. Now, if I scroll down this list of tables, I should see something with my app name. Notice here, this is my app name, book app, and then I get a book table. So that is the model that I named. So again, two tables got created. The second one, I believe, is just used for ID purposes. So incrementing the ID each time when you create a new item. So that's what that secondary table is for. Again, that's not something you need to worry about. The main table is book app _book. That was our model. All right, so we make migrations anytime again, I'll just state this again, just to make sure everyone is clear on it. Anytime the structure of this model changes, I need to make migrations and migrate to make sure everything is simpatico. Now, keyword there is structural change. If I modify my repr method, I do not need to run make migrations and migrate, right? So I could add like, maybe add a dash here just for styling. That's fine. That's not change the contents of this model. But if I add a new field like author, then yes, I need to make migrations. Even if I change like max length here to like 255, that is a structural change. So in this case, I would need to rerun make migrations and migrate. If I don't, like in this case where I change max length, that mostly might be fine, but I can run into issues where, hey, my model accepts something that's 255 characters. If I actually enter in data that has 255 characters, my database is going to throw an error saying, hey, I'm only used to 200 because you never told me about this update. So just remember, structural changes require a make migrations and a migrate. Cool. All right, so let's continue on here. All right, so it looks like we're getting to URLs. Now, I remember someone had a question about URLs earlier, so let's make sure we get to that when we're creating our templates there. So first thing we want to do is go to our project URLs. And there's a bunch of information here. Just going to delete the comments, takes a lot of space. All right, here, basically, the only job of the project URLs that we kind of do is saying, hey, we're going to redirect you to our app to handle URLs for us. So in this case, we're going to include something called include. Sorry, include it from Django URLs. There's something called include. This is a function. The path include, and then our app name. So it's book URLs. Oops, not IRLs, URLs. Sorry, typing and talking, not the best. Book app is our app name. .urls is the module. I think we need that in quotations. Make sure. So, yep. So we want to give it a path name. That's what I forgot there. So the path will be books / All right, so this is going to be our URL base. You can name that whatever you want. It does not need to match your app name. So again, my app name is called book app. My prepended URL is going to be prepended with books. Again, that's just a naming choice. You can name that pretty much whatever you want. All right, and we're going to include bookapp.urls. However, our app
I'm
file,
sorry, real quick. I'm sorry. What was the books again? What was that, Pat?
this, when we are navigating to any particular page, we're going to prepend whatever we navigate to, our URL, with books. This is optional. You can leave this blank even if you want to. If you leave it blank, that's totally fine. For navigational, like just consideration, I'm going to prepend it with books. We can see the differences actually once we get to navigating somewhere.
Whenever you say navigating, are you talking about the URL on the, like whenever we open up a web browser and we're running this page?
Yep.
It'll be, you know, local server 8000/books.
Yep. Yeah. So good questions.
Okay.
Let me try to, I guess I don't have a server running, so that's something we need to do here. But yeah, if I go to localhost 8000, right now there's nothing here, but I'm just saying for my purposes, again, this is optional. This is the designer's choice. I'm going to say I'm re-navigating to books and then some URL here, like home.html might be where I'm navigating to, or index.html. Or this is going to be a route. It's not even going to be HTML, but in this case, this books is just going to be organizational purpose. So, you know, as you mentioned, you can have multiple apps within your project. So if I had another app called like DVDs or whatever, I might put that under DVDs or videos, might be a better name for it, in case my library has like books and videos and whatever else I'm allowed to check out. So yes, just a naming thing for your URL. Again, I can leave it blank and just have index navigate directly to what are my home pages. That's just going to be your choice of how you want to organize your URLs. So yeah, books is what I'm going to call it. And then that's going to navigate here. But the extra step we need to do here is our app project or app folder does not have a URLs by default. I think someone asked on Friday, or maybe it was brought up, like, why doesn't Django do this automatically? I don't know why, to be honest. But with our method here, we're going to create a URLs.py. All right, so this is in our app folder now. We're adding a new file, calling it urls.py. The reason we're creating this is because we're telling from our main entry point, which is our project URLs. So whenever we navigate to anything in our browser, the project URLs is the first that's going to be hit, right? We're telling it, hey, if you get something that's pre-printed with books, we're going to automatically kind of redirect the logic. We're not doing any redirecting on the browser. We're kind of redirecting the logic saying, hey, we're not handling this. Our app is going to handle the URL matching for us. So here we're saying go to books apps.urls, but we need to create that. So I'm actually just going to copy my project URLs, dump this here, get rid of admin. And okay, so now we're going to be appending to our URL from before. So again, if I leave this blank, that's totally fine. Let's import from Django.views, import everything. Right, so asterisk means just import everything from views. Right now, views does nothing in it, so we're gonna have to add something there. But let's say for no base URL here, we're gonna navigate to index. So we'll do views.
On a lot of examples, people seem to usually just put a period instead of Django.views. Is there functionally any difference?
Good question. I don't think there's a difference. Actually, this should not be Django views. So thank you actually for bringing that. That should be book app. Sorry. So I'm trying to get my views here. So book app.views. I think the question that Ty was asking, you will often see .views. That just means current directory. It might be better because if I rename my book app folder, this should still work. I'm not sure I have a great reason for this, but I feel more comfortable adding my project or my app name in here. Again, that makes it less flexible, so this is probably bad practice. But again, this is referring to my URLs in my book app. So yes, leave it with a dot here, and it should work.
It's actually
It was slightly
just,
different, but more, yeah, slightly different. It was like from dot import views. For
From dot. Okay, so yeah, it's the same general principle. So are you saying import views like this?
Yeah, something like that. I was just kind of curious if there was any choice
I'm glad you're
there,
asking.
just a preference.
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking. So this is saying current directory. So it's going to look in the book app and then import the entire views module. This can work. This is totally acceptable. The only slight downside is anytime you want to use something from the views, you got to prepend it with views. In this case, if I do it like this and do a dot with a star here, I don't need this prepending views here. So again, if I'm going to be calling it often, it might get kind of annoying. Does that make sense? So one case, I'm opening the views module and importing everything from inside of it. The other case, I'm importing just the entire views module into here. I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
Yep.
So views, get me everything from inside of views. Index is something I'm going to call later. And then this should be, what is it? Name. So we're going to name our route. We don't have to name our route, but it will be beneficial later. So we'll call it book list. All right, so index has a yellow squiggly line. It says index is not defined. Well, that makes sense because my views has not defined anything in it. So here, if we simply create a method called index, takes in a request and return nothing for now. Now that should make our yellow squiggly go away because there's an index here. All right, so hopefully, if you understand the flow here, when we navigate to anything in our browser with our server running, right now our server is not running, it's going to go to the project URLs and say, hey, tell me where to actually go to. If we're prepended with an admin, it's going to default to the admin panel, and we'll look more at this later. But then we're saying, hey, if it's prepended with books, go look in our books apps. Right, so we're kind of logically redirecting to our book app.urls. Here, we're going to provide more detail of actually what's going to handle that URL request. So we go to books and add nothing to it, it's going to go to our index view. If, for example, we go to another path here, let's see what they want us to add here. Int book ID. Let me just copy this so I don't make a mistake. but let's make sure we understand what we're copying. So here we have a little bit of different syntax, these angle brackets. This is again something Django specific. This is saying, hey, this is actually going to be a variable or a type of value, not necessarily a static value. In this case, we're saying it's going to be an integer value, and we're going to capture it with the variable name of book ID. All right, so this is kind of like creating a function. If you remember, when we're creating a function, basically creating a parameter. Let's say my function. We're creating a parameter called book ID. That's essentially what we're doing here. Additionally, Django has types, so we know that this is going to be an integer value. In Python, usually, we don't have naming restrictions or type restrictions. You can provide a hint, like int like this. I don't know if we covered doing that, but I'm not gonna go down that line. Anyway, so we're just creating a placeholder for this value, and we're gonna call it book ID. All right, so that is that. In this case, book view is going to be our handler, and then we're gonna call it book view. All right, so let's create a method called book view, def book view. I'm gonna take in an HTTP request object, and we're not gonna code it up right now. So it looks like I am detracting from the web page, so I just want to make sure I don't lose anyone. In this case, they're using from dot import views. That just means import the entire views module. And because they're doing it that way, that's why they're calling views dot book list, views dot book view, views dot book create. For my purposes, I decided to open up the module and import everything inside of it. So in that case, I could just call index or book view without having to do views dot whatever. All right, so just want to make sure I don't lose anyone with that change up there. Any questions so far?
I have a quick question. Sorry if you already covered this, but for the first path, you're calling book list. Like, what's the difference between index and book list, I guess?
This is the name of the actual function in my views that's going to handle this request. I can name this whatever I wanted to. Again, it's a naming choice. I could call this homepage. I could call it book list if I want to be, consistent with the name. This is just kind of like a, how do I describe it? It's just it's a name tag we're putting on this route. So we're saying, hey, this route, we're just going to name it book list. This is totally optional. This is going to make sense when we're linking to pages or linking to routes, and we'll see that shortly. But you don't have to match that name. So in this case, I've called it index. I think that's just typical for your homepage. This is going to be a named route. So we're just giving this route an added name. I can leave this off and it should work just fine. So let's actually try that without name routes just to see what happens. All right, so I'm going to maybe change gears, not follow this exactly, but I'm going to, all right, I'm not going to get to forms right now. I just want to make sure this is working. So it's always good to kind of incrementally test, make sure everything is wired correctly. So I'm going to go to my views. I'm going to import something from Django.http, import HTTP response. All right, so this is going to allow me to send it response based on the request. And I'm going to return HTTP response. I always forget the parameters for this. Let's do a quick Google. HTTP response, Django. Let's see if we get to the right page. Oh, mistyped it, but still found it. Thanks, Google. All right, so I'm using an HTTP response object. Let's take a look at their example. So it looks like we just passed plain text, and that will render a page that will have that text on it. It looks like we control content type. Okay, so there's a few ways we do this. If you want to add content incrementally, you can use a response like a file-like object. So it looks like you can write actual HTML as a part of your HTTP response, which is kind of cool. I've actually never done that, so I'm going to try that now just for funsies. So we create our HTTP response object, use the write method, and it looks like we're writing just HTML in there. So that's kind of cool. Let's try that. So I'm going to actually create a response object here, and then I'm going to do response.write. Let's just keep it simple. I'm not going to write too much to it. So this is going to be HTML in the string. We're going to write a header one, make sure we close it. So it's going to be h1. Say hello world. Let's write one more line in the paragraph tag. Let's say today is November 15th, 2021. Okay, and then we need to still return that from here. So return that response. All right, so I'm just writing this just to test out, make sure everything is working from my URLs standpoint and our view standpoint. So again, my index method is going to be called when anyone navigates to a blank path, but that blank path is being appended to the path of books. So again, if someone navigates to where my server's running /books/nothing, that is going to go to my homepage or my index here. All right, if they get to the index, we're just going to return hello world. Today is November 15th. Let's test this out. Let's ask the audience. Again, this was something covered on Friday, so if you don't have to remember, that's totally fine. Brian Slusher, how do I actually start my server? Do you have to remember that command? If not, totally fine.
Yeah, we got Python manage py run server.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That sounds correct to me. So run server. By default, the port you're going to use is 8000. So if I hit enter here, notice it says 8000 right here. But again, if you happen to have another server running or just don't want to use 8000, you do have the option. If I remember it correctly, you just add it on to here. So if I want to do port 8888, I should be able to do that. So hit that. Notice that now my server is running at localhost 8888. How many 8s you need? Sorry, 4 8s. Again, normally you don't have to change your port. 8000 is the default port it uses. But again, if you have multiple projects running or some other issue, you can change your port here. All right, so I'm going to keep it 8888 just for whatever reason. So if I go to localhost 8888, notice I get an error page, but this is a good thing. This actually means my server is running and it's telling me, hey, there's actually nothing at the base URL, but there's a couple options for you. You can go to admin and also books. That is the URL I created in my URLs on my project level. So I go to /books, like it's asked me to. Cool, that looks something somewhat familiar or what I would expect. Yeah, hello world, today is November 15th. Again, that is coming from, we requested a URL. We went to localhost 8888/books. That is a request we're making. So it's going to be a GET request that's sent to our project. It goes to our project URL, says, all right, where are you trying to navigate to? Well, I see a match for books. So I'm going to send you to bookapp.urls for further investigation. We go to URLs in our book app. Now we have two options available. We have no additional path or we have an integer path, right? In this case, our URL had nothing additional on it. So it says, okay, cool. I know you're trying to navigate to this named route, or this route. Notice that we didn't have a name on it. Everything worked correctly. So that naming is not mandatory, but it called our index function. Our index function is in our views. We executed whatever we wanted. In this case, we're not using the request at all. We're just giving back a response from that request.
Hey, Ankur, I see you use .write there, and the only time I've used .write, that function, is when I have a file open and I want to write something to it. So what is that function writing to in this instance?
Good question. So I think you mentioned, .write was a method we've used in the past. That was for a different type of object. So that was probably for like a dictionary writer reader, right? You remember dict writer, maybe what it's called?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, this is not the same write method. This write method happens to be named the same, but this is a write method on an HTTP response object. So it is doing something entirely different. I'm actually not sure what's going on with the write method. We could kind of read here. Maybe there's a write method here. Right. But yeah, it is not related to writing to a file at all. This is a totally different object. I don't find the right method here. Right. But yeah, always good to clear up any.
That makes sense. Thank you. I didn't think that was
Nope,
an
your
object.
question
But now
asked,
makes
though.
sense
Yeah,
in that
so this
context.
is somehow we're writing HTML. Somehow the HTTP response saying, okay, I know you're writing HTML. Let me actually capture that and send that as part of the response. So I think the HTTP response automatically creates like an HTML page for you, is my guess. But yeah. glad you asked that question though. All right.
Sorry to interrupt. So how did you change your port?
How did I change my port? Good question.
Yeah.
Again, normally you don't have to this, but you do have the option. So I added a port number after run server. I will occasionally have to do this because sometimes I have multiple Django projects running. They both can't use the same port. So if you tried to run it and I had a different server running on that port, you'll get, hey, something's running on this port. Choose a different port number or some error like that. Yeah, in this case, you don't have to specify your port. If you do not, the default is 8,000. But in this case, I chose for a reason to specify it. So again, just know that you have that option. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. So again, I went to /books and nothing else. If I try to go to something additional, let's try to go to like 77 on top of books. All right. So notice I get an error because book view got an unexpected keyword book ID. That is something I screwed up for sure. You're going to be seeing this page fairly often in terms of, I'm not saying you're going to always see errors, but always take advantage of this error page. Like, so this is Django trying to be nice to you. It's not trying to, make your life harder. So if you actually look at this, it should point you to what's going wrong. Like this whole thing, you don't need to really read that too much, but the error message up here, I'd say 90% of the time should directly point you to what's going wrong here. So looking at this, again, reading error messages is definitely a skill all of you guys should be developing with more practice. But in this case, it looks like, all right, book view, that's something I've named, if I remember. I created a function called book view, got an unexpected keyword argument, book ID. What actually is happening here? So with our routes that we created here, we are saying we are anticipating a value and capturing it. So essentially what we're saying is we're going to be taking in a value of book ID. Now, if you remember in Python, you have to have the appropriate parameters in your function. This isn't JavaScript or the Wild Wild West, right? JavaScript, if you don't pass a parameter, that's fine. It's going to take a value undefined. If you pass extra parameters in JavaScript, that is fine also. JavaScript will just ignore your extra parameters to a function. Python is a little more strict, and I think that's better, not having a restriction, because it prevents you from making errors. So in this case, we're saying this view handler is expected to take in one parameter in addition to the request. That should be called book ID. So if I go to views here, I need something called book ID here because we're sending a value to this handler. So book ID needs to be here. So if I save this, I should get a different error if I refresh. Notice that my error changed now. It says didn't return HTTP response object. It returned none instead. So again, it's telling you exactly what the issue is here. Again, the errors might not always be this straightforward, but get used to looking at this page and reviewing it, looking through it. Don't kind of freak out and say, hey, I don't know what's going on. This page is trying to help you and trying to point you to what exactly is going wrong here. So, this error happened to be pretty clear cut. We're not returning an HTTP response. So that's simple enough. We can return.
Ankur, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
What you just said really helped clear things up, where you were talking about the URLs with the integer and the book ID, like that helps a lot. I still have a question though on the routing for the URLs in the top level URLs file in the project. And I'm just wondering why does it seem we end the path with the /? Is there some reason for that, or is that just like a convention or something like that? So for example, we have books /. If we left the / off, like is that just a good delimiter that's always used, or is there a significance there that I'm missing?
Let's find out. So I took away the / now. My server refreshed. Usually your server will refresh. Excuse me. If there's an error, you'll see it in your terminal here. So again, if you see this block, that means if you see this block here, that means everything is good. So kind of get used to looking for this. If you see this, it means your server is good. If you get some error, your error message will be spit out here and your server will not be running. All right, I take away the /. The question is, what will happen? So let's start again. We go here. All right, so notice it's still fine with that and knows that books is the location I can go to. Let's go to /books books. All right, homepage still works. Now the question is, what if I append an integer like 77? All right, so that did not work. I want to make sure here. Yeah, so here I appended an integer, but I was not able to pick up that I'm going to a different route. So it looks like that's the issue here. So slashes, the way I view it, again, I'm not the most web centric person, but I kind of view it as folders. So in this case, I'm imagining like books is kind of a folder that has a bunch of routes nested in it. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but I think that slashes, again, URLs just kind of rely on them. So if I add that back in, I could add it maybe right here actually. So if I do it here, let's see if that works. I think it should work. Okay, I got a warning here. So again, you might see warnings. Has a route beginning with a slash, remove the slash as it is unnecessary. If this pattern is targeted and include, ensure the include. Okay, so it looks like Django is telling you you should normally have a trailing slash on your parent URL. So that's what this warning is saying. But let's see if this still works, even though I'm not following their conventions. Yep, it seems to be working. You are navigating to book ID 77. So again, a good question there. Just kind of take it as standard practice to always have a trailing slash. It can still work, I guess, but based on URLs, we kind of want to use slashes there. So you do need slashes to kind of have appropriate routes, was the answer there. But I'm going to put that in my base URL.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No, appreciate your questions. Always welcome questions. All right, so again, here we have a parameter that's an integer. So if we try to navigate something like, instead of 77, let's try to navigate to donuts, right? Page not found. So again, it knows exactly what type of variable you're looking for. In this case, integer was not found. What if I tried something a little different? Just go for it. Can I do string? I think string is a type. Book, string. I don't know. I'm going to quickly go down this route. I know if you're trying to follow along, I might kind of lose you here. I'm just trying to test something out. All right, so in this case, I'm creating another route for book title. Let's see if this works. So in my URLs, I added another path or another route. In this case, I'm saying this is going to be a string versus this is going to be an int. I might need to look this up. I'm not sure if str is correct. But in this case, we have two routes that essentially have the same base path, but different data types, int and string. So book view title, book view title. Okay, I think this should be everything. Oh, so I renamed it. Looks like I call that book title. So I should name that here. So book title is what I meant to put here. Again, those namings have to match. So good example of this doesn't automatically work. You need to actually match the name here with the name for your parameter. All right, so book title looks like my server is good with that. If I go back here, refresh. All right, you're navigating to book title. So again, data types, it's kind of cool that you could have different data types in your URLs. Usually you're not going to have the same route with different data types, but you might. More commonly, you're going to have different paths. So if I actually want a different path, I might go like title slash and then book title and then ID, just to make it a little more clear. Again, you don't have to have those additional, subfolders or sub URLs, but all right, cool. So just kind of understand you essentially pass parameters to your URL, and Django will kind of handle them for you. So in this case, retain integer, we're able to capture that value and then use it in a response if we need to. More commonly, like we're not just going to reflect back. More commonly, this will actually be a book ID. We'll probably query our database, say, hey, we're trying to find this book ID, give me some details on it, and then return something that's relevant for that book ID. All right, any questions up until this point? What questions you guys have? Did I lose you guys anywhere? Anything that's unclear, please ask. Even if you're like 99% sure, you have that 1% of doubt, just go ahead and ask it, because again, it might be something that we all kind of learn from.
The question, oh, go ahead,
Jonathan.
Got a very polite audience here. I'll go, Jonathan, you can go first.
Okay, so my question is, when we're creating the path and the URL path, we're saying, hey, we're going to take in an integer. We're calling that we're correlating that to the book ID from views. Is there a way to have that where it's restricted to actual book IDs, like in a future, more elaborate project? Or is that kind of out of the scope of what we're doing right now?
Your URL cannot do that. That is what your views would have to do. So here I would need to check. Usually you'll do something like, let's actually kind of add one more line. We'll take a break shortly because I know we're due for a break, but let's incorporate our models. This is where you're gonna be doing most of the time. So your views is your central point. It's gonna collect, it's gonna basically but connect your URLs and your backend data, and your views kind of collects everything and then we'll respond to. So again, your views is kind of your central nucleus. In terms of the MVC pattern, it's your controller. So this is the kind of the confusing part about the terminology. So we talked about MVC or MVT. Model, M stands for model. That's going to be your models. So in this case, we create a book. That's what the M part is referring to. The V part, the views part, is actually not your views.py. That is the kind of confusing part. Your views are actually your HTML templates that you're creating. That's what your user is viewing. Your views.py file in this terminology case is your controller. Right? So this is referred to as a controller. Again, if you want more details, I'll say Google it. Not too important to know about, but your views is not actually the V part in your MVC model. I guess MVT is a little different, but I'm not going to go down that route because I don't really care too much. All right, imports, book is our model. We can import, everything from there if we want to, but let's be specific here. So in this case, we normally do something like book object is going to be
of model.
Thank you. I'm going to do book dot objects dot get ID equals book ID. However, if nothing is found, this might throw an error. So let's actually try this out and let's see what happens. So I'm going to try to request finding a book ID based on wherever I pass in. If you remember, I've not created any data in my database right now. So any book ID that I pass here, it's not going to find a book. Let's see actually what happens here. So I don't want to go to donuts. I want to go to 77. All right, so we get a does not exist error. So the question was, how do you prevent this? Last thing we'll do before break, this is something we've introduced, and this is something we'll be using a lot more going forward, especially when we get to React. But there's this idea of a try except contract in Python or try catch in Python, or sorry, in JavaScript. This is the idea of writing safer code. So there's three pillars that I kind of go with, and I'm taking a quick tangent here. One is having the skill to debug. The other is writing safe code, and the third is testing. So debugging is a practice of actually going through your code and figuring out what is going wrong, right? So we've been doing debugging all the time. This is something a lot of new developers kind of struggle with. Like they're able to write code, but when something goes wrong, sometimes new developers are like, all right, I don't know how to fix this. This is something that all of you guys are gonna get better at with time, but just kind of understand, make sure you're honing in your debugging skills. So stuff is going wrong. No one writes perfect code all the time. You should be able to go through the steps of figuring out what is wrong by console logs, stepping through your code. I'm a huge fan of VS Code's debugger, where you can actually put a breakpoint in and kind of step through it. You can do that with Django too. It's a little more complicated. We'll do that one day, I promise. Testing, we've talked about, test-driven development to verify that what you expect is what you get out of it. Writing safe code is that third part where if stuff goes wrong, does your application crash, or does your application kind of is prepared for it? And this is, you might say, well, if I have testing debugging, why do I have to worry about writing safe code? Well, that's because your users are not always the smartest users, as in they might write like terrible input. They might, do a whole lot of things that you can't anticipate. So that's where try except comes into place. So try except is basically saying, hey, we're going to try to do something essentially, but we know there's a possibility that something could go wrong in terms of an exception being thrown. So if there's any chance of an exception being thrown, you should always wrap your code in a try except block. And I would say that always, but even if you do something like x equals 4, the question is, can that fail? Maybe, I don't even know, like maybe there's some weird use case where this can fail. I'm not saying every line of code needs to be wrapped in a try except, but when you're doing stuff that could throw an exception, you're like, all right, most of the time you're going to pass a valid book ID, right? You're going to probably have links that actually go to each book ID. You're not going to be typing in URLs manually, right? Like we don't, when I go to Amazon, I'm not typing in URLs like, donuts maker, right? I'm going to click on a link that's going to take me to something valid. But just in case something goes wrong in our navigation or the user's, trying to go to a bad path that doesn't exist, we want to wrap it in a try so that if an exception gets thrown, we can catch it here and say, I don't know, we could just console log the error, the error, and maybe let's return an HTTP response that says page not found, right? This is much more useful to the end user. Instead of seeing like some error page or your server crashing, which is terrible, you can gracefully handle the error and saying, okay, error happened. Maybe we can't get you to where you wanted to go, but we're going to return something useful to the user, and we're not going to crash our server. So this exception is going to be caught and handled. Rather, if you don't have this try catch construct, an unhandled exception will end your application. It's going to bubble up to the top level. Exceptions can exist, and it's going to say, okay, well, then exception was thrown. We're going to end our execution. This is not a console log because we're in JavaScript. This is a print statement. Also print out the error. All right, so let's give this a try, and we'll take a break. I promise. Invalid syntax as E. All right, so let's give this a try. All right, server looks to be good. If you remember here, I got this block, so my server seems fine with whatever I wrote. Book, I'm not actually using book object. That's fine. Let's try to go to a bad URL. So let's go to 88. Okay, page not found. Simple enough. Not the most elaborate of responses, but hey, my server is still running. I don't have an error message. Looks like I got an error here. This is where I printed out to my console on line 20. It says book matching query does not exist. So that's useful information. I could say, okay, looks like we got a bad ID. I could probably try to fix that. Or, you know, if this were a link, I'd try to investigate why do we have a link to a book ID that exists. Any questions on try except? Again, we're going to use this more and more often, so get familiar with it. It is sort of new syntax or a new construct, but you're going to be seeing it a lot. So if you're uncomfortable with it, definitely ask questions, or Google it. It is kind of it's covered a lot in different languages. It's called different things. Again, JavaScript, it's try catch instead of try except. That's the same idea.
Ankur, the appropriate return statement that you want if the try is successful goes below the try except block. Is that correct? Like I wouldn't put the return after the book equals objects dot.
That's a good question. I don't know. There's also, so I don't want to get too involved. There's also a finally and also an else block that you can put. I think technically it should go in the else block. But to answer your question, I don't think it matters too much. I'd say maybe put in your try just because it makes it clear that either this block is executing or this block. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that. It's going to work in the same manner because essentially, if the try is successful, this block of code will never hit. It'll continue on. So I guess dealer's choice in that case. I think I would maybe prefer to actually put it in here, but I don't know. I may be inconsistent about that, but yeah, good question. Okay, cool. I think we're due for a well-deserved break here. So let me pause this. Okay, so we were working on our views, kind of just testing them out. Let's actually get to our CRUD side of things. And for that, we need to actually add data. So this is going to be a small detour, but something that definitely wanted to get at. We're going to talk about something called fixtures. This is the Django kind of approved way of adding data to your database. So here I'm going to create a folder and call it fixtures. It must be named fixtures. So this is, again, something Django is specifically going to look for, a folder named fixtures. All right, so if I go to fixtures, do I need this? Let's actually Google this because I always get to look at documentation for fixtures in Django. There's a great page on it because I've looked at it before. Providing initial data for models is what I want. Okay. So fixtures inside your app, right? So we're going to create a fixtures folder. Let's see. All right, so there's two formats that we kind of go with, probably more. There's JSON. So we talked about JSON before. There's also YAML. Again, they're just different data formats or text file formats. I'm going to go with JSON format. So I'm going to kind of copy this. All right, and I'm going to, in my fixtures folder, again, this is in my app folder. I'm going to add a new file and call it, let's call it data.json. And you can call that whatever you would like. Then this, I'm going to dump in what I copied from the reference page and update this for my app, for my needs. So I want to substitute in book app for my app, and my model was called book. Give me the primary key fields were title and pages, I believe. So let's say this will be, what's the last good book someone read?
Reading Gravity's Rainbow right now.
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Gravity's Rainbow. Could you estimate how many pages this book has?
About 800.
800. It's gonna be an integer. All right, what was the second one there?
All Quiet on the Western Front.
All Quiet on the Western Front. And do you have a random estimate of?
I don't know, 300.
300 pages. Great. Sounds great. Primary key 2. Okay. So what we're specifying is just our seed data. Now, this is an alternative to what we did last week. And this has benefits. The main benefit is that primary keys will be overwritten. So each time I run my fixtures, my model for Gravity's Rainbow is going to have the same primary key. This is different than when I was writing it through the shell, where you can still delete records from your database. However, the primary keys will not kind of reset automatically. But here, again, just to review my steps, I created a folder inside my app folder, called it fixtures, and it must be named fixtures. Inside of that, I created any old file name. So again, data.json, you can name it seeds.json, donuts.json, whatever you want to name it. And then you want to create a JSON format for your models. Again, I kind of just copied the template from the fixtures reference page. So I just copied this syntax and appropriately updated it. So I have a title and pages fields, primary key 1, my model, book app is my app name, and my model is book. All right, so given that I have this, again, this is where I believe trailing commas are a problem. So I can't have a trailing comma here. Notice that VS Code highlights it in red. So for JSON, trailing commas are bad. So I'm not going to have one. All right, let me kill my server here.
Won't it create, you specified PK there, maybe you said it and I missed it, but won't it create that on its own?
That's a good question. I think you need to specify it, but let's leave it off and see what happens. So I'm going to specify for the first one. We'll leave it off for the second one. I think in this case, it'll just use the next available one, will be my guess. But let's see if it actually works or not. All right, so now that I have my data here, to actually load this, I'm going to run Python manage.py load data, all one word, load data, and then the file that I want to run. So in this case, it's data.json. So if I run this, let's see what happens. All right, so it looks like that key, I do need to specify the exact primary key I want. It's not going to auto increment it. So let's add that back in. PK was 2. All right, so if I load fixtures again, it's going to wipe my data and overwrite it. So I don't have to like delete this record that may have gotten inserted. Let's run that. All right, so installed 2 objects from 1 fixtures. You can have multiple fixture files. So in this case, I probably want like a book.json fixture that had additional models, might want a separate file for each of those models. But in this case, I can run this again. It's going to basically wipe my previous data and rewrite it. So I did not create 4 different data objects. It's 2 objects each time. And it's going to overwrite the past data and use it. So if I go dive into my database quickly, library DB, let's do select star from book app is my app name, book is my model name, semicolon. There we go. We have 2 data records and only 2. All right, so again, fixtures is another way you could seed your database, and this is the Django way to do it. So maybe you want to focus on that. Again, you could do it yourself manually through like a seeds file, but that has some drawbacks, namely that your primary keys won't kind of automatically reset. Any questions about fixtures?
Yeah, doing the for the seed data file you were just talking about, that doesn't rewrite either, right?
It does. So I guess
For the Python one. Oh, it does rewrite?
Yeah, so if I create a seed file, let's call it seeds.py. Again, you can name that whatever you want. I usually put it next to my manage.py. So if I want to do something like this, you can. I could do imports from book app models, import book. So I can create book objects here. So let's call it book1 equals book, b1.title equals dictionary, b1 dot pages equals, I don't know, 944. Okay, book2 equals book. Notice I'm not giving IDs here. I think that's fine. So b2 dot title equals, I don't know, Charlotte's web, b2 dot pages. All right, so I'm just trying to review this question. I don't know how many pages there are. If you specify ID here, this is going to cause an issue. Let's give an ID of truth. All right, so I'm specifying the ID manually here. I think that should work fine. Let's actually check this. I'm going to make this ID 3 and let's check if this works. So now if I run this, it's going to be a problem with my existing data. So let's actually drop my data. SQL. See if there's a Django way to do this. I'm learning on the fly. Django drop all data.
Hey, Ankur, while you're doing this, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
So with the data.json, I accidentally put the pages in the string, got an error message saying that it has to be an integer. Can you not pass? And I just got rid of the quotations and it worked fine, but can you not put integers in a string with JSON?
Correct. So JSON actually has data types here. So, well, yeah, it looks like integers had to be numeric values. If you put it in strings, it's not going to know that you want that to be a number. It's not going to auto convert for you. I believe it's the thing going on here.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, so I ran a command while answering that. Python manage.py flush will delete all the data in your database. So you can do that through Django. You don't have to dive into your database. All right, so I should not have any data in my database anymore. Let me run the seed file. So the normal way, or the previous way we did it was run Python manage.py shell and then feed it our seeds file, so seeds.py. So I like doing this just because I get to write some Django queries. So my seeds file again, just inserting. Oh, we need to do save. That is my fault. Remember, you got to save your records. Just creating them is not going to associate them with your database. All right, so I'm creating a couple book instances. Second one, I'm actually specifying an ID. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I got no errors, which means I likely did things well. So if I go to, let's use one of my plugins here. I know you guys probably don't have this, but I could investigate my tables directly. All right, so I got two entries here. Notice that my ID is 1 and 3 because I said I want Charlotte's Web to have an ID of 3. The downside of this approach, kind of why I went down this line, is if I run my seeds file again, it's going to basically append to this data. So I'm going to get an error because it's going to try to insert something at 3 again. So if I run this, if I run it, that ran. Surprised that ran actually. All right, so it looks like I did not get a collision, so I guess I'm so surprised there. Maybe I should double check this, but yeah, so the dictionary got added again. Charlotte's Web was stuck at 3. If I run this, the whole thing I was trying to get at, if I try to delete something, so if I delete all my records, like something like book.objects.delete, that'll drop all my records. Now I'm going to reinsert them. Anyone happen to know what I'm doing on here?
Encore, is it all delete? All and then delete?
Oh, that sounds promising. Thank you. All right, so I want to delete all of them. Thanks, Tanya. All right, so I did that. Let's see what my table looks like. All right, so I got ID 3. Why didn't it create my dictionary? All right, I'm having some trouble with this example, so maybe I'll just abandon this before I cause more trouble then. All right, so dictionary got inserted. It got ID 4. That's the whole thing I want to show. So your ID kind of don't reset. I'm sure you could reset your sequence ID if you really wanted to. But again, fixtures are just a little more nicer in that it automatically overwrites your data each time. Versus I guess if you want to append data, the seeds file might be a better way to do that. Okay, anyway, fixtures was the main focal point here. So I got some data in my database. That was the whole goal here. So let's actually use that data. So we're gonna go through our CRUD operations. And the easiest one is the R, where we're reading data. So we have data in our database. We simply want to show it on some web page to our user. So let's actually go through those steps. So if I go to my views. All right, so currently my homepage is not returning anything really interesting, right? Just saying hello world, great. But in this case, I want to actually return a list of every book I have in my library. How do I actually go about doing that? So this is similar to what we did here, where we can access all of our books. We need to import the book model, which I think we've done. So here we could do something like all books equals book.objects.all. Again, this is making a query to our database. It's the same thing as if we're writing select star from book app book. So that's the table behind the scenes. And this is the same thing. We're not writing SQL though. We're just doing Django queries. All right, so all books. And again, trying to be safe here. I'm gonna wrap it in a try for whatever reason. If that fails, I want to catch it somehow. So exception E, and maybe just print E and return. I guess I should amend something I said earlier. If you do not return, if you do not catch the error, Django will automatically have some default error pages that throws your way. So in this case, if I don't have a try except, Django will throw a 400, which is a bad request. So 400 is the HTTP code. If you remember, HTTP codes. 400 just means that there was an error from the request side. So client error means you're trying to go to a page that doesn't exist. 500 means server error. So in this case, it probably should be in server error. But anyway, so we get all books and we want to show all books somehow. So this is where we get into creating templates. All right, so I'm going to create a new folder, call it templates. Again, Django is looking for something called templates. You don't really have naming control off the bat. Inside of here, by convention, we just create a nested folder and we call it books. And then in here, create a new file. It's called index.html. All right, you guys with me? So this is not actually an HTML file per se. It's a template that Django is going to use to create the end HTML file. So here, let's start with base HTML.
So in the prior examples, I think they were going along with calling that nested folder the same as the app folder.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
That is correct. I think that is convention, but I kind of want to just highlight you don't have to, but you're right. Normally your templates folder will have the same name, a nested folder with the same name as your app, but you don't have to have that. So I'm going to break convention. It's called books because I don't want book app to be kind of everywhere. So call it books, have index.html. In here, I want to show a book list. So if you guys remember the syntax, curly braces, it looks kind of weird. Again, this is just the syntax for Jinja, but anything you put between curly braces, percent signs, this is going to be Python. Normally you don't write Python in HTML, but this is a template file that's going to generate to an HTML file. So you do something like for book and book or all. Let's see what I want to call it. It's called books.all. Sorry, I'm trying to remember here. So we're getting a query set. I think we need to do all. additional thing you gotta do with Jinja is you need to end your for loops or your if statements. So this is in Python, you don't need to write end for or like delimit it in any way, but in Jinja, you need to write that end for. So this is my block for my for loop. And here, let's make a list of items. Let's say you want to do book dot title. See if this works. We need an unordered list. Any questions? And I'm typing this up. I also want to make sure I'm not going too fast. So I'll pause here.
Ankur,
A couple seconds.
in line 14, aren't we already passing books as a query set?
Yes, you are right. Yeah, so books is a query set. So we don't need, all is a query that we don't need to run. We're running that. I think you were correct on that. So books, yeah, let's make sure we're right there. So for book and books, just show the book title for now. All right, so essentially this is a HTML file, but I've kind of embedded some Python in it that Django can kind of pass some data. Question is, how do we actually pass something called books to this HTML file? And that's going to be done via the render method. So I go back to my views.py. Let's actually get this going here. So I want to render something, and this is a method coming from Django shortcuts. We want to render something. So the first thing you need to pass here is the request itself. So it's just a parameter that's expected. Your request that you get in is where you're going to pass to the render. Next, it looks like we need to pass, let's see, template name. So in this case, my template name is books/index.html. Then I want to pass some data. So this is going to be a keyword argument. I'm going to say, hey, my data is going to be something. I'm going to tell you what it is. So data, let's call it my data equals books is the name I'm going to give to that parameter, and the value is going to be all books. All right, so I'm going to pass this dictionary as my data. So that's how we always pass data. It's going to be a dictionary. Your dictionary is going to contain all the values you want. In this case, we only have one value, but again, it's totally possible for me to pass multiple values inside my dictionary should I need it. In fact, let's actually do that just for fun. Let's say heading. This can be hello. All right, so I'm passing two values. One is called books, the other is called heading. That's going to be passed as my data dictionary. Now that I'm providing data to this render method, anything I pass here, these values will be accessible inside of my HTML template. Again, if I'm going too quickly, if there's a question, please stop me, because this is kind of some Django magic, but just know that these are going to be variables that I can access in my template now. So I'm going to have access to something called books. Also, I will have access to something called heading. So I could do something like heading and just do that. Okay, so this is my new index page. Hopefully I wired up everything correctly, but if not, we'll deal with the error. But again, we're rendering something and then we need to return that render. All right, so books is the name of my folder right here. So if I rename this to something else, like let's say I rename it to, I don't know, pages, then I would need to call this pages. Index.html is the template file. Let's give this a go. All right, so now if I navigate to my homepage, let's see what happens. Oops, looks like my server has an issue, so I'm not running it. Python manage.py run server. I'm going to go to the default port of 8000. So I need to change this to 8000. And let's go to books. All right, there was an error. Well, at least that's my code kind of telling me it's an error. So there's something that went wrong. Let's try to investigate. So, all right, let's look at our console output. So it looks like got an unexpected keyword argument data. So it looks like I screwed something up here. That is totally fine. Let's actually read the docs for that. So Django render method. All right, Django shortcut render. So there's request, template name, context, content type.
change data to context?
It's context. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah. So it looks like I misremember the parameter name, so that's why reading documentation is great. Thank you, James. So it looks like context, I want to pass it, a dictionary values to add to the template context. By default, it's empty dictionary. If a value in the dictionary is callable, the view will call it just before rendering a template. Okay, cool. So that is my bad. This needs to be context, not data. So save that. Looks like my server is ready to go again. Looks like I have some errors from my template file that I need to clean up. Let's get rid of these goodies for now. Okay, so let's try this again, refresh. All right, there we go. We got hello world, that is a value I pass as a variable to my template. And we have 2 books available in our library. We have dictionary and Charlotte's Web. All right, if we had 500 entries, this should list as many entries as we had because we're simply getting every book from the dictionary, from the database, and then iterating over that in our web page and listing them out as list items. Any questions on how we got this data presented here?
I'm currently getting, there was an error. So I think I missed something.
Okay, I think, again, this is great, because I think, again, it's easy enough to run into an error. Let's make sure we are able to debug it accurately. So Morgan, are you willing to share your screen with us?
Sure, let me get rid of my midget porn on the other screen and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, and just piggybacking on this, Ankur, I'm running into the same problem, and I saw you change some of your HTML. So I just use the typical exclamation point boilerplate. Is that possibly one of the problems with it?
No, that should be fine. Yeah, let's make sure we handle errors, but always good to see some student code. So looking at what we have here, for book and all. Yeah, so I think the dot all was an error I had before. Tanya pointed out. So yeah, line 14. So the unfortunate thing, if you run into issues with your template file, you're not going to get good error messages. But if you delete that dot all, because yeah, books is an iterable collection. It's a query set, which is essentially a list. So let's give that a try and see if that works.
Yep, that's all and everything.
Wait, yep. Again, easy enough to make mistakes. I made that mistake. Luckily, I had you guys to help me out here. But yeah, in that case, books can just be iterated over. You don't need to run .all because you're not actually querying the database. The .all, if you remember, is a database query. But in this case, where we did that .all when we got the books, so we don't need to do it here.
Cool. I'm sorry, I hate to. So I didn't have the .all, and I'm still running the same problem.
That's fine. Yeah, no, I think debugging is valuable. So yeah, if you're willing to share your code, let's see if we can spot some errors. Again, this is good practice for honing our debugging skills. So, all right, so we have so I do see one error. Looking at what you have. So again, you have a for loop on line 12. Do you notice you're gonna have your unordered list created every time for that for loop? So I think you need to pull out your unordered list because that's kind of wrapping your for loop. Yeah, so that item right there should go outside your for loop because we want to create only one list that's going to have multiple list items. The way you have it right now, it's creating multiple unordered lists, which is not necessarily what we want. Does that make sense? Yeah, so your for loop, again, it's going to create an unordered list every single time, which might be an issue for us.
And
Yeah,
then
so-
just take it outside of the N4.
Well, yeah, so we're going to have one list, and that list is going to have multiple list items in it. So yeah, so right now, the way you have it, you're going to have book.title, but it doesn't know what book is in that context. So your for loop is actually what's giving a value for book. We're creating a variable called book in your for loop. So your list item is referring to something called book. So that needs to be inside your for loop. So can you move line 16 back inside to line 13? Yep. So now we're creating a bunch of list items. Again, this goes back to our HTML days. List items need to be child elements of a list. So you want to create your unordered list on line 12 and then close it on line 16. So essentially you're embedding a for loop inside of a unordered list in the HTML. So you're just generating those list items inside of this list. Does So
Okay,
let's give
thank
that a
you.
try and let's see if that changes anything for us. Okay, so we still have an error. That's fine. Let's. Do you have a print statement? Can we go to your views? All right, so your views, you're calling books.object.all, books my data, context, that looks kosher to me. Okay, could you go back to,
You got pages index and not books index.
yes,
So you have to change your folder name or your, yeah.
good catch there. Yeah, I kind of changed the name on you quickly there. There you go. Good catch,
Gotcha,
Bruno.
got you.
Yep, so
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks,
naming is really
Bruno.
fragile. You just gotta make sure, whatever you named it, you gotta be consistent with that. Again, I changed it on you really quickly, so that's probably my bad there. But yeah, good debugging there. Again, you're gonna get used to debugging, so hopefully you guys don't get too flustered if something doesn't work just right off the bat. All right, let's continue on here because we got a lot of CRUDing to do. Okay, so we are doing the R part. We are able to read here, right? Let's actually add some links here. So instead of just doing book.title, let's add a tag, right? This is how we create links in HTML. Let me make this a little smaller. Right, so I'm gonna wrap my title in a link and I wanna navigate somewhere. Where do I wanna navigate to? So href, and then one way I could do this, again, there's multiple ways to do it. There's a good way and a slightly less good way. I'll do the latter first. In this case, I want to navigate to maybe a detail page. So let's go to a book detail. That small. All right, so I want to go to something called book detail. I need to add that, so I'm going to do this quickly. Into book, sorry, that's where I want to go to. So, sorry. All right, so here, I want to go to that route I created before. So my route before was an integer value containing the book ID. So if that's my route, I simply want to go to book.id. That's going to be the ID for that particular book value. And the curly braces are just Jinja syntax. So that's how I actually insert the Python value. So it's similar to like string interpolation in Python, but we use double curly braces here. Let's see. I will need to test this out. So href, let's see, let's refresh. All right, hovering over this, I don't know if you guys can see the bottom, very corner, bottom left. Notice the route it's going to take me to. It's going to be localhost/4. That is not what I want. So I want to do books/books. See if that changes where I want to go to. All right, so now it's going to navigate to localhost 8000/books/4. So if I click on it, notice I navigated to book ID 4. That is my other template, or sorry, that's not even my template. That's my HTTP response being handled there. In this case, let's actually change that to a template. So now I'm going to go to my pages. I'm going to add a new file. Let's call it book detail.html. Let's create a quick HTML page. So I'm going to use, let's use the exclamation. Here in my body, I'll add, let's say, an H1. Let's do book.title. And let's do a paragraph. This book has book.pages. All right, so this basic information. Obviously, we don't have too much data to show right now, but I'm going to show a title. And then tell them how many pages that particular book.
Hey, Ankur, I have a question.
Sure, go for it.
What's the difference between like the, I guess, Jinja syntax and then the double bracket syntax? Like, I don't get what the difference is there.
That's a good question. So they're both Jinja syntax. So you might see this, or you're saying sometimes you see percent signs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So my interpretation of it, and I might want to double check Google, when you're just displaying a variable value, you use double double curly braces. If you're writing a for loop or if statement, that is when you need to change to using percent signs.
Perfect. Thank you.
We could try it both ways. It might work, but as far as I know, double straight up reading a value, use double curly braces. When you're doing more Python logical things, you gotta do the percent curly braces. But I'm gonna do a quick Google during a break just to make sure I refresh my understanding of why that is necessary. But that's a great question to ask though. Both of them are Jinja syntax though. All right, so we got our detail page here called book_detail. This is in our template. So if I go back to my views, before, looks like I don't get this right now. Before I was just returning an HTTP response. That is not what we want. So instead, I'm going to return a render. Render, again, we need to pass the request. That's the parameter that's expected, the template name. So this is in my pages folder. I called it book detail.html, and context needs to pass some data. So let's say my data. All right, so my data is going to be a dictionary. That's going to take in a book. That's what I'm going to name it. And that's going to be simply the book I get back from the database, right? So we navigate to an ID. We're going to query the database. Hey, we want to get that particular book object. We're going to pass that as part of our data. Again, this right here is just a variable name that I am choosing. I can name that anything I want. Well, anything that's a variable name. I can't put spaces here. That would not be kosher. But I'm calling it book, and it happens to be that variable is called book, but these don't need to match is the main thing I want to mention there. All right, so now we have access to this book value in my template. So if I could go back to my template, we kind of assume that ahead of time. So this book value right here is coming from that dictionary. I'm going to pause here because I assume some of you guys are trying to code along. So again, this is a variable that's getting data from your context. So I named it book here. I don't have to name a book. Let's change the name. Again, I don't want to cause chaos on your end. We'll call it B. That's fine. I could call it just B. But if I rename it to B here, then my context dictionary needs to be renamed to B. So this name has to match. It's just kind of the way it is, because it's looking at a dictionary, looking for something called by that name, and that's going to have a value of this. So if I name it B here, then I can name it B here. You guys with me there? Hopefully those parts are matching up. Okay, so I named it B. That's not very descriptive, so I probably should name it better. But for this example, I'll continue on because I named it B here. So given this, we get a particular book from the database based on the ID. Assuming that works correctly. If it does not work correctly, we'll hit this error. But assuming we get a book back, we'll create a dictionary and pass that to our template so our template can use some values off that. So if I save that, let's go back to our homepage. So this hasn't changed. Let's click on Charlotte's Web. So that should take me to book/3. All right, there we go. So we got some book detail here. We got Charlotte's Web as a title that has 277 pages, which is what I kind of estimated Charlotte's Web has.
Ankur, real quick, would you mind taking a stroll back to your index page at some point? I'm still having the same problem with the path with the book's ID. Can you elaborate on that link a little more at the in the list?
The href?
Correct.
Yeah. So here I'm navigating to the URL I want to go to. So in this case, books that, and then the ID is the number that's going to be in the URL. So in this case, book/3 is where we went to, because that's the ID we got here. Let's see if I take away the /. Let's see if this works. So now I'm just specifying a relative path. So if I do this, let's see if this will work. Let's refresh. Yeah, so you provide a relative path. So the difference here, just to highlight it, if you have a / here, it's going to be an absolute path. So in this case, it's going to be from your base of your server URL. So if you have a /, you need to specify the full path like this. Or if you don't want to have the leading path, it's going to be relative. So in this case, it's going to use wherever location we are and append book's ID to it. So if I do it this way, it still works. So I still go to book/3. So I guess two different ways to do it. / means absolute path. Without that, it's going to be relative path. Now, the way I approached it here is the not so great way to do this. So I'm going to books ID or book ID. The better way we do this is with named routes. So this is something that we touched upon earlier. So currently I have, this should be name. Oh, sorry, I want to add a name here. Name equals, say, book detail. So now we actually give it a name. So I think Tom introduced this on Friday. So instead of, where am I going here? I want to go to index. Instead of hard calling it like this, I can use %. There's a function called URL. I get pass the named route. In this case, my named route is book detail, and I want to pass it the value. Now, your question might be, why is this preferred? We can talk about that briefly. I want to pass book ID. All right, so this URL is a function that's going to be executed. It's going to call the name route of book detail and pass it book ID as a value. So same thing we're doing before, just a kind of different way of going about it. Now this is preferred because if anything changes with your routes right here, like this path might change, but this name should not change. So for example, if I added book info, I don't know where I'm going with this. Let's say I want to change my route path to be book info. Well, the way I've done it here, in this case, nothing should change. This route knows exactly where to go to, right? I'm still passing it the ID. This route will take me to the appropriate URL. I don't need to change anything in my templates. However, if I did it the previous way, where I had it like this, right? This worked before, but now that I changed something in my URLs, right? I changed it to book info for whatever reason. I don't have a good reason for why I did this, but let's say I just, whatever requirements change on my server side, I need to add prepending. Well, now I gotta go through every single template I have, and I need to append or update all my links. So now all my links need to be book info / book ID. Now this might seem trivial, but again, our examples are very scaled down. Imagine everything we talk about multiplied by 1,000. So let's say we had 1,000 template pages. Well, now we got to go through all those pages, or maybe do a find and replace, whatever, to actually update all those URLs. That is not scalable in terms of a developer sense. So that's why we prefer name routes. So again, if I change it to this $URL, my named route in this case was book detail, and then book ID. So now, again, now my template is kind of agnostic of what actual URL it needs to go to, because the URLs will handle that. So again, I could change this as much as I want, call it donuts, anything I want. The named route remains the same. So this is handled internally as opposed to the template file having to know what URL specifically it's going to. Both will work for you. One is slightly better than the other, is the takeaway I'll kind of give you. Again, URL is a function, book detail is the name. That's the named route we're giving in our URL. So again, this is an optional parameter, but if you want to use a URL function like we are, you want to have a name for each of your routes. So in this case, it's good practice just to have that in there. Was there a question out there?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that clears it up a lot. I think the problem I'm having was when I uploaded the data, so it's just some from back then. So
okay,
I think we're
cool. Okay, so we accomplished the R part where we're reading data. We need to do creating, we need to do updating and deleting.
Ankur, may I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
you're
Just
good.
back about that URL function you were talking about. Is that if we wanted to look at the documentation for that, would we be looking at Jinja documentation or would we be looking at Django documentation?
I believe it'll be Django, because again, you're writing Python here. So this part that I've highlighted right here is Jinja, this curly brace. Jinja is kind of like middleman between HTML and Python. So Jinja is just allowing you to write Python here. So in this case, this is Python. So we actually look up Django URL function. It's a good question though. How does named routes your dispatcher. All right, yeah, I'm not gonna necessarily go through reading this in front of you guys, but again, there should be documentation on it somewhere that kind of gives you a better description than what I've given you, is what I'll leave you at.
Thank you, Ankur. I appreciate it.
But yeah, it should be a Django specific thing, not a Jinja thing. Okay, cool. So with that, again, we accomplished our read for CRUD, which is arguably the easiest. Maybe delete is up there in terms of easiness, but we need to do updating and creating. So before we do that, let's definitely take a break because that will be a little more involved. But again, that's going to involve creating forms, allowing user input, parsing it, and then adding data to our database. So let's take a break. It's 11:31 here. Let's take a 9-minute break, and we'll go through the other parts of CRUD after the break.
Hey, Ankur, real quick, would you mind hanging on just for the break?
Recording.
We can delete our seeds file, right? That's not even, we're not even.
Yeah,
gonna
so
use
again,
that.
this is just kind of manually writing in data, which is fine. It works for our needs. But again, fixtures allows us to kind of recreate data as needed. The best part about this is that if I hand this project off to someone, they could just run our fixtures file. They don't have to, again, the seeds file they could run, but that is not the Django appropriate way to do it. So yeah, fixtures is the way to go here. So I updated my fixtures. Now we have 4 records. We have Gravity's Rainbow, All Quiet on the Western Front, Dictionary, and Charlotte's Web's other books. If we click on them, should still give us relevant details for those books. So 300 pages for that. Dictionary has 944. I actually looked up Charlotte's Web that has 192 pages, as Google tells me. Okay, cool. So let's actually get to our CRUD, other CRUD capabilities. And this gets a little more involved, but nothing too complicated. So we want to have the ability for users to create and update data from their end. So we're not restricting it just from the developer side. We want users to be able to create new data and update existing data. This is where forms come into play. So forms are just ways to get user input. So I'm actually going to create a new file, call it forms.py. All right, I believe on Friday, Tom introduced model forms. Is that correct? We go over model forms. Yes, no?
I think we mentioned it a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to opt to use model forms. They are way more easier than kind of doing forms yourself. Again, you are free to use forms kind of manually, create them yourself, but I would highly recommend using models.form. Over here, Django models import model form. Why it's not working? Let's go to our documentation page.
I think it's
Django.forms.
Django.forms.
Thank you. Jingle.forms, always good to know where we're importing from. Import model form. Thank you, guys. All right, so model form is what we're going to leverage. Again, this is us using OOP. Model form has a lot of baked goodness in it. We're just going to take advantage of that and add on to it. So we're going to create a class, call it book form, inherit from model form. Just again, going back to just the way Django is a framework, we got to kind of adhere to their structure. In this case, we need to have a nested class called meta. This will have 2 items in it. One will be fields. That's what fields we want to expose to our user. So I'm going to do title and pages. I could expose ID, but normally you don't want to expose your internal IDs to your users. It's not relevant to them, and they're not going to need to update that or modify it or even view it. So I'm going to leave ID off, but note that that is a field I could provide. And then the model I want to work with. So the model is obviously going to be my book model, but I need to import that. So from book app.models, let's import book, right? We need to actually tell our file what model this form is going to be associated with. That's be our book model. So that's simply all we got to do for this form here, this model form. Any questions on any of the model form business? You can read up more on model forms. There's some additional fields I think you could add in here, but these are 2 required fields.
Hey, Ankur, I have a question.
Yep.
So I kind of like went through this tutorial yesterday and they didn't have a separate forms.py file. They just had that in the top of views.
Yeah. So yeah, looking at what we have on the curriculum page, fair note. It's mostly organization. You don't have to create a separate file. I would highly encourage you to create a separate file just to keep your, kind of your logical pieces kind of separate. But yes, you could create your book form directly in your views. It's still going to work fine. I mean, again, it's just a matter of file organization at that point. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I want to make sure I don't confuse anyone. In this case, I'm creating a separate forms file, but that is totally optional. But now that I've done so, if I go to my views, I need to actually import that module. So from bookapp.forms, I need to import book form. Book form. All right, but yeah, again, you could just create that form right here. It'll save you an import, but I'd argue that's poor file organization. But up to you in the end. All right, so we have our book form. Let's create a method here. It's called def book creates. We'll take in a request object and nothing else. We're gonna wrap this in a try except just to be safe in case anything goes wrong. All right, so let's try something. So we're gonna create form. It's gonna be a book form. Now we're gonna create my data. It's gonna be, let's call that form will be our data value. Again, you can name that as you choose. It's gonna take form. We want to return a render. All right, so this is going to render request as the first parameter. We're going to create some template to be created yet. So it's going to be pages/book. It's called bookform.html. And the context will be my data. All right, so kind of jumping some steps here, but we need to create this template file. It's not going to be automatically generated for us or anything like that. Let's quickly do that. So I'll go create bookform.html. Here, I'm going to just use the pre-built-in HTML template or VS Code template for HTML files. Here, I want to actually add my form to this page. Now, this is why model form is really convenient. I don't know how to create the fields myself. Those fields exist on the form object that I created here, or form instance, I guess I would say. That was created in my views. So here, this form contains all the logic it needs for what it needs to show on my HTML page. You guys with me here? So we created a form instance, we pass that to our dictionary, and then pass that dictionary as our context. Now I should have access to something called form, and it's simple, very simple to use in our HTML file. So here, I'll, for now, create a heading and say, add new book. Then I'm going to create a table. Again, I'm going this route because I'm going to use a different rendering method than I think Tom used as P or as paragraph. I'm going to use the as table because I like the alignment a little better. So here I'll do form as table. I believe that's method. All right, so this is going to convert it to a table. Basically, there'll be fields within a table. But the only thing that you need to add also is a button for submitting. That's not pre-baked into the form that gets rendered here. So button type will be submit. This is going back to HTML days. So I know we didn't talk about forms too much, but you need to have a button that's type of submit. And then this will be, let's call it add book. Any questions on this setup here?
Hey, Ankur, so we've talked about like two different functions that we're giving these forms, the form.asTable function, and we've also talked about the URL one. Is that just in Django framework? Like as this file gets run, it understands that .asTable is a function? I really don't know where it's pulling that function from.
Great question. Let's take a look at some documentation. So if I go to model form, so again, we are taking a step back. We are inheriting from model form. Model form has methods on it. So if I try to look at the definition. All right, so model form actually uses multiple inheritance. It's inheriting from base model form and something called model form meta class. Again, you get very many levels in it. So I'm gonna try to find what I'm looking for. So base model form has some methods in it. let's look for, oops, should not modify the source code. Okay, so this function exists somewhere in the hierarchy. Again, there might be 20 levels here, so I don't know how deep I need to go. But yes, if I go to my documentation, model form functions. So here, I believe I should find, I'm looking for, find as, right, not here. Form sets, let's go back to forms. It's got to be somewhere here. All right, so as table is a method. I want to actually find that method though. Let's try the Google's Django as table, as paragraph. Yeah, short answer is it's a method off the model form. Just wishing I could find some more detail on it. Okay, maybe there's no actual details on it, but just know that, oh, it looks like these aren't even methods. These are form rendering options. All right, I guess they're not even methods. They're just rendering options. So interesting. Okay, looks like I don't even need the parentheses. So let's get that red documentation there. Go back to my, where am I going here? Form here. Looks like these are not needed. So I could use both versions. I'm just going to show you the difference for funsies. All right, let's try navigating to books. Oh, we need a URL. So we created our template. We created our view to handle it. The last thing we need to do is add a URL. So book create is our handler. So I go to URLs. We got to add a new route. So the route, we can name it whatever we want. Let's call it create, or maybe just new. We want to handle it with book underscore create, and then always give it a name route. So we'll name it book create. All right. Actually, I usually like dashes here, but I'm not going to change convention or naming convention here mid form. But usually I will go with dashes for the name routes, to be honest. All right. So we have our new route. It's going to be books/new should take us to book create. And book create should present us with a form. So we should get this form, and that's a model form. So we'll see what it looks like. But we're passing a form object and simply rendering it via an as table or an as paragraph. Either case, we need a button. All right, let's take a look at this. So I'm going to go to book/new. Hopefully I coded everything correctly. It's like my book not defined. That's not good. Probably had a typo. Book is not defined. Name error. So I've named something incorrectly. Let's take a look at my data. That should be fine.
Do you need to pass something under the accept, or can you leave that blank?
Under the what?
The try and accept.
Oh yeah, probably should have some of that. Thank you. Pass that for now. I'm not sure what's going on here. Trash that.
So
Don't you need
I'm
ASI?
looking at the forms.py file, and I think I saw that you had an error that I'm getting as well.
So yeah,
being
sorry,
defined.
just to interrupt there. Yeah, so the error was that line. I was looking at the wrong window, but yeah. So again, your terminal will tell you where the error was. I was looking at the wrong terminal, but yeah, the error was there. If we scroll up here, but yeah. Thank you for helping with that. Morgan, you said you were getting an error with your model form.
It's on the forms.py, and I think I saw it pop up on yours as well. Maybe it's just a previous one. Yeah, so line 7 model equals book. That's telling me that that's incorrect, and I see
So
it.
yeah,
because I
make
didn't
sure you
import both.
import it appropriately. So you got to import it from your models file. So make sure you have the appropriate app name and then models and the name of your model. Okay, cool. Hopefully we can resolve that. But okay, let's take a look. All right, so this is what the rendering looks like. So this half is what the table view. I don't know why my button's up top. I need to fix that. But this kind of aligns stuff a little better. Like this is the paragraph rendering. Notice like these aren't aligned as well. So I prefer as table. Again, doesn't really matter. It's just the appearance. But it looks like my template, my button should be outside the table. Okay. All right. Need to test it out. Okay, I'm gonna delete the duplication here. So this paragraph stuff can go away. Save that, refresh. All right, we should be able to add a new book name. So title, let's go with, I don't know, Of Mice and Men. Not sure how many pages that is. Probably felt like 246 pages. All right, so now we're able to import data from the user side, but when we hit add book, notice that nothing really happens here, right? This add book is not providing anything for us. So we need to actually add a handling for this. So we go back to my views. So currently book creates is what is handling this view. So this is a GET request. So when we talked about HTTP, when you type a URL, that is submitting a GET request for this route. When we're going to add a book, we're going to do something called what's a post request. That is how we submit data. So GET request is simply reading. Post request is updating or deleting or creating. So add book should submit a post. So to do this, I'm going to add some logic here. That's where the requests object comes into play. So I can do an if statement saying if request dot method, I think is post. Let's go with parentheses. If that is equal to post, then we want to do something here. So let's maybe just do a print statement. We're posting data. Return an HTTP response saying you added a new book. Obviously, we're not actually adding anything right now. Okay, let's see if this changes anything. Refresh. Can do anything. Let's go back to our documentation page. So I think they have something coded for us. So let's take a look what they have. So these are our templates. Let's look at our views. So book creates, book form, request post or none, valid, save. Press that post. All right. Try it that way. Nothing going on there. There's something wrong with my form here. So why is that not posting? All right, got troubleshoot here. So we're getting our form. We have our button. That button is not doing anything. Yep.
You still need to use a form tag and then include the action that it's going to take whenever you submit the button.
Yes, that makes a lot more sense. Also, I need my CSRF token. This is all coming back to me. Or I guess, thank you for that suggestion. Yes, so we need a form because that's thrown in a form and that's where the button goes. Thank you. That I knew I was missing something. All right, so this will render the form field. You still need to nest it within a form. I think maybe the form can go outside. I'm not sure if that works.
And then you'll also need to do action and tell it to post it.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is saying when we submit it, it's going to be submitted with a post. And then we have our CSRF token. So don't forget that. It's easy to forget because I forget it often. But this is a security thing within Django. If you don't include it, you'll get an error. Just remember, you need to have a CSRF token inside your form. Let's take a look at this, refresh. Why is this button still up top?
And I'm sorry, I said action, I meant method.
All right, so let's see if that looks. Okay, I'm not sure why this button's up top. It's kind of bothering me, but it shouldn't bother me. Let's try adding a title. So blah, blah, blah. Oops, something's still not wired correctly. Oh, that is not supposed to be there. There we go. All right, so sorry for those syntax errors, but we added a book, but we didn't actually add a book, but we were able to capture this post method. So method equals post. When we hit the submit button, it's going to submit a post request to the same URL. In this case, the current page is, book/new, wherever that is, it's going to be submitting a post request to that same route. So to kind of review, when we initially come here, we're doing a get request. So request that post is not going to be anything valid. So we're not going to hit this. So we kind of do this again when I refresh. Nope, let's just go. So when we go here, that's a get request. So this part of the code is not executed. We are doing this part. But then when we submit the form, that's when we actually hit this piece of code. Then we return here. So we don't actually get into the logic down here. But what if we actually want to grab the data off this post dictionary? So if we do request post, this is actually a dictionary that has values in it. So I can extract the title. So let's do title equals that. Pages equal request.post pages. Let's print out the title here. Okay, let's see if this works. So now I'm actually grabbing values from the user entered. So if I enter in book, not bad. Let's go with Bible. Pages will be 444. All right, so notice I'm able to capture that title. Now there's some level of magic here. The name you're putting here must match the field name. And that's coming from model form. So your model form is creating fields with like an HTML element that has a name of title. That is why we're able to extract it this way. All right, so just know that this name has to match your field. We're able to grab the data up there. But if we look at our page here, we should be able to simply use that post dictionary inside of a model form, check it with is valid and save it. So instead of extracting these values, we could simply do form equals book form request.post. If form is valid, so this will do our basic error checking. If we add additional validators, that should check it too. When we do form.save. And we're getting an HTTP response, which is fine.
Hey, Ankur, I think we're kind of going a little bit too fast. Just a second. I kind of, can you explain this page again? For the last like 3 minutes, we kind of jumped ahead really quick.
Yeah, you're right. And you're right. So I tend to do this, especially when we're approaching lunchtime. So I think it'll be best suited if we take a lunch break and then kind of do this at a slower pace. So yeah, I did go a little fast there. I acknowledge that. Let's kind of tie this up and then we'll take a lunch break and then continue lecture after lunch. Just make sure we spend enough time on this. So the things I screwed up, my syntax was really bad. You need to create a form element with a method of posts. So that's something I omitted initially. This table is optional. The reason I've added this table is because I'm rendering my form as table. So if you do as P, you don't need to have a table element here. Just keep that in mind. Important things though, you do need a CSRF token inside of your form. And I think if I take this button outside of my table, that should fix my errors there. So again, just to review, we're passing a model form object to our HTML template. We're able to use as table as a way to just render those fields automatically. And this is a huge benefit of using model form over creating your own form. CSRF token is a security measure. you need to have a button to actually submit that form. And that type of that button must be submit. This is HTML logic. This has nothing to do with Django. This is just kind of how forms work. So forms, you need to specify how it's going to be submitted and what's actually going to submit it for you. When you hit the submit button, you're sending a post request to your view handler here. Your request object is going to have a post dictionary. That's why I'm simply doing a if request.post. I could do is not none to be a little more clear. Right? So basically this is checking, hey, do we have a post dictionary here? Assuming we do, we can know that this is a post request. Alternative way to do this would be, I think what I was doing before, if I do method equals post, maybe this is a little more clear. Let's try that, see if it works the same. Server's good. Cancel. All right, new book will be, I don't know, just say something. Pages will be 50. All right, so here, what do we do here? How do we get from that?
Your response includes the full form.
Ah, thank you. I don't know how I screwed that up. You guys are great at catching that. So leave format title, go back to new, something, pages, 50. Oh. Format title is not valid. Here. All right, so I'm trying to get into here, but request.method. Try printing that out. Print request method. And at this point, I should read documentation. So I'm going to Django, HTTP requests. Django. Make sure I know. All right, so HTTP request objects, that's what we're using. There's a scheme, there's a body, there's a path info, there's a method. So that's what I'm trying to use here. So it looks like I can do request method and check if it's a post. That's what I was trying to do before. So that looks fine. Is this failing maybe? Let's see. Print form is valid. So this is, again, this is how I kind of debug, setting some print statements. Don't really have test cases I can run. So back here. Form again. I could do form.title. I think that's my error. I don't think I can do form.title. Yeah. So form.title is not what I want. What do I want actually? Form.instance.title. That's what I want. Okay. So this form, model form is not actually your model. I think form.instance is actually what your model is going to be. So form.instance.title should get me what I want. Let's try that. Say lunch items. Four pages. There we go. Lunch items. All right. So my mistake there was I was using form.title. Again, form is not your actual model. It is a model form that kind of contains your model inside of it. And you access that model instance with the instance keyword. All right, so again, I know we kind of split up there, so we will kind of touch back on this after lunch, but key thing here, understand that you are submitting a post request. This is going back to our HTTP knowledge. This logic right here is actually a GET request. I can make that more clear by either wrapping this in a, if request equals, I could do this to be more clear, but the way the logic is, this block will be executed in return. Therefore, this block will never get executed if we hit a post. But I guess I would definitely agree this is more clear. So now we know, hey, if we get a GET request, we do this. And then if we get a post, and again, a post happens when you submit a form. So these are two different two different paths we're taking with the same URL, right? So we're navigating to the same page, right? My URL is not changing up here. I'm still at localhost 8000 book/new, but there's two different actions that are being taken. When I navigate initially, I'm submitting a GET request. We do one thing. When we submit something, we're doing a separate thing. So book items, pages will be 58. Now, when I hit add book, we're still going back to book/new, but we're submitting a post request. So that post is going to execute this logic since we're telling it to, and it's not going to show me back that form here. All right. So if I do this, hit add book. We added book dinner items. Now let's actually go to our homepage, make sure these items are being added. So we go back to the homepage. There we go. So I added 2 books called something, some nonsensical titles, but lunch items, dinner items, those are now in my database. I'm able to extract them.
Ankur, whenever we break for lunch, would you mind leaving your views page open for a little bit? I got kind of lost in the weeds there with the edits.
Absolutely. I'll leave this up. We can ask questions after lunch, but happy to leave it up. So with that, don't want to take too much of your lunchtime. So let me. All right. So we added the ability to create new data. And looking at the curriculum page, we have a slightly different version of what I had. So here they are passing in the request.post. This is a dictionary object. It might not be clear just from looking at it, but it is a dictionary that has values in it. Essentially what this is saying is if this post dictionary exists and that dictionary only exists when the post method is used, then use that to populate our book form. If this happens to be none, as in doesn't exist, it's going to default to none. So basically this will just be essentially an empty parameter. So this form will be an empty form that you get back. This form is valid is kind of doing this part for us, right? So if it's a blank form, is valid is not going to be true. So it's going to skip this part. If we're doing a GET request, form.isValid is just going to skip that block is going to be false. So we all automatically go down to this render and render the form with a GET request. So we just show the form and they fill it out. When they hit submit, that's when we get back a request that has a post value on it, as in this will be a dictionary. Therefore, it'll populate our model form using that dictionary. And then form.isValid, if that is true, we'll go on to save that instance. And then we'll, in this case, we're redirecting to the book list page. All right, any questions about, again, the curriculum page or anything that I wrote? So again, a little different. I have a little more detailed stuff here, but it's doing the same thing essentially.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm sure that you'll cover this later on, but whenever I click the submit button, where is stuff, like where's the link between in the, let's see, is it the views file? Yeah, between the views file and the HTML page where we just submitted the info from the form. Like where is that link at?
Excellent question. So this is kind of how forms work. So forms are an HTML concept. So forms exist on any web page if you want them to. There's an attribute called method. This is specifying how this request is going to be submitted. Generally speaking, I'm not going to say always, but most of the time it's going to be a post request. And this goes back to HTTP fundamentals. So if we kind of go to that, HTTP request types. Again, I know we spent a little bit of time on this. Just kind of want to. So these are all the types of requests you can have. Get is the most common one. It's when you navigate to a web page. You're making a GET request, meaning, hey, I just want to retrieve some data, and your browser will receive data from the server, and then you'll see an HTML web page. So again, there's post, there's put, there's delete, there's a whole bunch of them. I actually don't even know what trace is for, but it exists. It looks like there's another page here, get versus post. So if there's any questions, if there's any confusion about what these request methods are, I'll definitely encourage you guys to read this page. But the get request is to request data from a resource, in this case, like a server. Post is used to send data to a server, again, creating or updating a resource. And that is what we're doing with this instance here, where we're creating a new book entry, right? So That's why we decide to use, we decide to use a post method because we are actually creating or updating data on the server side. So that's what this method.post means. This button, just the way forms work in HTML, you need to say that this button is your official button that's submitting this form. So that's why I have type equals submit. These two pieces together, method equals post on the form and having a button that is type submit. When the user clicks this button, it's going to submit this form, and this form will send a post request to this very page that we're on. So if I go to create a new, oops, that server down. Let's get my server back up. Python manage hi run server. Run server. Okay, so now if I go to this page, all right, so we made a GET request. That's why we're seeing just the form here. Again, if we trace back to our views, we made a GET request. That's the default request that happens when you go to a page. So this part here, let's actually move this away because move it down here. It shouldn't make a difference since I have an if statement for both. But when we come here initially, we're doing a GET request. So this evaluates to true, and we just display a form and render that page. However, when you hit that submit button, we get another request that's very same URL. So we look at URLs. We're going back to the /new page. So this URL, we're setting a post request to the same location, but we're doing something different now. And the way we determine what do we need to do is based on the method. So when we go to a page initially, it's a GET. When the user hits the button of submitting a form, that's translated to a post request because that's what we specified in our method here. We said we're posting when we submit this form. Therefore, when we come back to the same handler, book create, we are getting this request method as post. We are able to use this post dictionary. This dictionary contains the values that the user entered. So it's capturing it from the HTML page, packaging it into this dictionary and sending it to us on the back end. So now we have access to all the values. This is kind of just a shortcut to kind of pre-fill our form with those user values. There's a little bit of magic going on here. It's just matching up the field names with the field names that the form expects. So we get a populated form, we validate it, and then save it to our database. I know that was kind of a lot, but did all those stuff make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And then kind of looking at it a little bit broader scale, if I wanted to have another button that say took me back to the main index page,
yep, it
would be something similar where we'd have another form with method equaling post.
So
then,
if you simply want a button,
or we can put in the same form.
If you simply want a button to go to a new page, you don't need to use a form. A form is used specifically to submit data and capture that data. If I want to have just a button that takes me somewhere else, that's simply an A tag with a button in it. Let's say home page, right? So in this case, the button would have, or the link would have an href and be similar to what we've done before. So we could do something like $signs URL. That named route was URL was index, I believe.
Pages index.
And does not take in any garbage. So I need to add this in here. All right, so we're using that URL function. I think I called it index. Again, you need to match names. Nope, I called it book list. So that's what I'll do here. And so this is how you would add a link just to go to a different page. Again, posting is specifically when you're submitting some data. In this case, when I'm navigating to the homepage, I'm not really changing anything. I'm doing a GET request to the homepage in this case. Let's see if that works.
Okay, awesome.
So if I click homepage, yep, takes me to the homepage. Again, that didn't change anything on the server's end. That was simply a navigational element. Versus, again, when you submit a form, you're actually changing data, and that's why a post request is used. So let's say of mice and men, I don't know if I added that yet. Mice and men, probably 267 pages. All right, I added a new book of mice and men. In this case, I'm not redirecting. I think the logic that's on the curriculum page is redirecting to a new page. But now if we go to the home page, books, yep, of mice and men got added, 267, looks good. All right, what questions do you guys have about what we're doing here? Okay, let's get to the edit case. And luckily the edit case is very similar to our create case. So much so that I'm just going to temporarily copy my create method. And I'm going to write my edit method. All right, so book create, let's say let's call it book update to keep the CRUD naming there. So the U is for update. It's gonna take in a request. However, in this situation, we're gonna get a book ID passed to us. Why do we need a book ID? It's because we're editing a particular instance, right? We're not just editing some random book out there. We need a particular ID so we know exactly what we want to update. So for this, if I go to my URLs, instead of having simply a route that's new, which obviously has no ID associated with it because you're creating a brand new thing, in this case, I'm going to create a new route here. Maybe I shouldn't call it new, but add a route here. And this one, I'm going to use the book ID and tack on an edit or an update, whatever you want to use it. So now I have a new route where if I have a base of the book ID and then have /update, that should take me to the update page and not simply the book detail page. So this, I want to make sure I change the naming. So book updates, call that book update also. All right, so I just added another route because this is another action we want to do. We're updating. That's going to be handled by the book update method from my views. So I go back to my views here. Book update. Now we'll accept a book ID. Again, make sure I'm not going too fast. That book ID is coming from this parameter that we specified. It is specifically called book ID. If I renamed it here, like update ID, then my views will need to update. There's no magic, magic naming that you can just use. It's got to match exactly what you named it in the URLs. But in this case, I want to call it book ID, so I will retain it as book ID. All right, you guys got that? Okay, so now my book update is going to do things pretty similarly. Get rid of this print statement. But we have additional things. So right now, as I have it, if I go to, let's go to something, and then update that. So if I go to /update, notice I'm taking to that template page. It says add new book, but I am in my update URL. So I would probably want to update this page in a couple ways. Like I don't want to say add new book. I want to say, hey, there should be update existing book. So we can make that change pretty easily. Here, I'm going to add a new field to my data to say title. Let's call that action. This will be edit, and action over here will be add. Or if I want to keep the name same, I'll call that create, and I'll call this update. All right, so now I have another value I'm passing to my template. Again, it's the same template. It's still book forms in either case, but now my book form, we go to my template, can do things a little different. So here, maybe I could do an if statement. If action equals, what do I want? Add, and I called it create. Then we're going to do this heading. Else, again, we're just kind of sliding in some Python here. Else, we'll do an H1 with a different title. Right, so this will be updates book, and we actually use the title for it. Oh, I just thought of a better way here. So sorry for switching gears, but what if we provided a book instance here? Is that what I want? And I guess the form has an instance on it, so we'll do action.
Hey, Ankur, can we call that update? Can we like grab that from the dictionary?
No. So what dictionary are you talking about? From my data dictionary?
Yeah, can we call that and throw that in the HTML then?
Yeah, we can call action. So that's what I'm referring to here. This action value is what I'm checking. Are you saying we use it here? Or
like just print the value.
Print it where?
Right there, like in the HTML file somewhere. So if you're using the edit form call, you can just use the action value versus the create action value.
Are you saying I should use something like action. So this would
Yeah,
say,
will that
create
print
book.
out, will that print out update or create?
Yeah, so if I did it this way, it could work. I was gonna do something a little different, but we go this way. So if I do it this way, if I wanna capitalize this, make it look a little nicer, update and create. Okay, let's check this out. And then I probably wanna do that for my button also. So my button print says add book. I can simply do, sorry. I can simply slide in the action. Again, this action is just a string that I'm passing to my form or to my template. So now if I do it this way, yep, this will say update book, and my button will also say update book. So if I take a look at this, refresh, notice it says update, update. So that looks better now, right? I'm actually updating. If I go back to creating a new item, /new, cool, that says create book and create book. So it's a little dynamic there. Okay, so again, we're now showing update book or add book, but this isn't user friendly, right? I am updating book 5, but I probably want to know my initial values, right? Book 5 has a title and pages there. Right now, I can still change it. Let's actually change it to my updated title. Let's make that 1000. So if I do this, this actually will probably throw an error. You update it, you add it. All right, let's actually see what happened. So I go to books. I bet it added a new book because that's the logic added. Yeah, so added a new book. We didn't actually update. So let's actually change some things here. All right, so our book update is taken in a book ID. We should be able to leverage that by grabbing an instance. So I'm going to grab the book from our database. So book equals book.objects.get. And now we actually have an ID that we can get from. It's going to be book_ID. All right, so now we get an instance back. And then in our model form, we could pass in a CRUD for instance and say, hey, our book is our initial value that we're going with. So we get the book from the database via this query. And then inside of our model form, we pass a parameter called instance and say, hey, we have a book already we want to start with. Work off of that. So our form is going to be initialized based on the values from that book. If we do this now, let's see what happens on our web page here. So I go to Gravity's Rainbow. Let's go to /update. Notice that it's pre-populated with the correct values for that particular book. So this I would argue is more user-friendly because if I want to modify it, I know what I'm modifying from. All right, so that's one way to get this to look correct. But we still need to do something additional so that we're not adding a new book for this case. We want to update. So for that, if I look here, when we post, as in submit this form, we use the post data, we check if it's valid, and then we save. The missing link here is that we need this instance. So we have an instance of book. We need to get that instance back. So let's take a look at our curriculum page, see what that's doing. So book update gets the book. We pass it an instance. And let's see. Okay, so we need to pass the request.post to our book form. So if I take a look at that, we are doing that. We need to pass instance equals book. So can we just do this? I think we could just do this. This should grab the relevant data. I'm not sure if we need the ID there is the question. I think we do. So I think we need to get the book ID in either case, or the book instance. We get the book. And then here we need instance equals book. So this means we're updating, we're not creating a new entry. If we don't pass an instance here, it's going to think we're trying to create a new book entry. All right, so I pulled the book getter out. So in either case, get or post, we're going to get a book object and then use it as our instance here. All right, so with these changes, we should be able to now update our instance instead of creating a new one. So let's actually do that. We change this to updated.
Ankur, I'm sure I'm probably the lowest common denominator here, but I'm getting left in the dust.
Sorry, I heard it was kind of, there's a lot of background noise or something.
Sorry, my girlfriend's vacuuming. I'm sure I'm probably the lowest common denominator, but I'm falling behind.
Okay, is there anything in particular where I lost you?
Yeah, so whenever I tried to make any changes for the update, I was originally able to bring the blank form up, but after that, I changed something and I got an error. And so pretty much like most of the changes that were just made on the views.py file, I'm a little behind on.
Okay, are you able to quickly share your screen?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah, so again, error messages, you guys are gonna get familiar with them, but let's take a look at Morgan's errors. Hopefully, this will save some other students some time if we run into the same thing. But again, Django errors are usually descriptive, so hopefully you can pick it out. Again, if not, we might have to take it offline, but let's take a look at it. So can you show me the error you're getting? Oh, so one thing is on line 49, you're setting instance equal to book. The small issue there is you need something equal to book, but you're in your book create method. So when we're creating a new item, we don't have something already that exists. When we're updating an item, we should have a book. So line 49, you should take out the instance equal to book. Because again, we don't have a book in this case when we're creating something. We just pass in nothing. If you scroll down to book update, that's where we should get an instance.
Oops. Okay, so I
yeah, so we actually need to grab a book. And the way we grab a book is by querying the database. So we have a book ID. Using that book ID, we should be able to query the database using book.objects.get, specify the book ID, and that should pass us back a book object.
Okay, now I think that would come after the post.
Yeah, so I changed it. I'm actually gonna. Could I take the screen share back?
Of course.
Yep. So yeah, I'll kind of show my code again, but you should be able to kind of make your changes as we're going. But yeah, in this case, I grab my book. This is the first thing I do in my update method. I grab a book from the database. So I query a database using that book ID, and then I get the book instance. For the get case, I simply set instance equals to book to initialize my form and then render my form. So that's why when I go to /update, my form already has correct values in there. That's because I already initialized it with my existing book object that I got from the database. For the post case, it's similar. We're gonna additionally pass in the request.post dictionary because that are the user values that were added. And then on top of that, we're going to say, hey, we had our initial instance, so we could use the ID from there. So when we do a form.save, it doesn't actually create a new item. It's going to update the existing instance that we were using before. So assuming I've wired everything correctly, let me try to update this. Let's say Gravity's Rainbow actually probably has 799 pages. Let's go to update book. You updated a book, Gravity's Rainbow. Let's go to the home page and make sure that's true. So where is it? Gravity's Rainbow. Yep. Notice it got updated to 799. It didn't actually add a new value because notice there's no duplicate Gravity's Rainbow there. It did change the ordering here, so there's some sorting going on. I assume it's defaulting to last updated time. We could probably control that by how we get the items. So if I want to do something quick, again, not trying to hop around too much, but let's change this to order by, and let's say do it by title. So now it's going to be alphabetical, hopefully. Refresh. Okay, notice it's alphabetically sorted. Looks like there's a lowercase issue. The lowercase comes after uppercase. Not the best sorting, but I'm sure there's a way around it. Anyone know offhand how I sort it in case insensitive? Like an I or something? All right, I won't worry about it, but there's a way to case insensitive sort it. Anyway, moving on. So we did our update. But there's not really a problem per se, but notice that my book create and my book update are very similar. That can be condensed, right? All this logic looks pretty similar. The only differences are like one case I'm passing an instance. I need to get a book ID for the update case, but otherwise I didn't change a whole lot here, right? This changed, that changed, and this changed. Right, not much there. Again, our action's a little different. So I'm not actually gonna spend too much time right now because it's not that valuable, but understand that you can condense this logic into a central function and kind of reuse all the code that we coded up here. So that's, I'm gonna leave that as an open challenge for you guys, because again, I don't want to waste too much time on it. But again, just notice that this code for the update and this code for the create, very similar, a lot of duplication. That means you should condense it to be proper with your coding. And you don't have to, it's gonna work, like we just proved it worked, right? But there's a lot of redundancy. You don't wanna have your code kind of get bloated. Right?
Ankur, I'm sorry, just for a second, can we have the screen on the full book update method?
Sure. All right, so we did our updating. Our final step will be the deletion. So that's the D part of CRUD. So we're just gonna delete it. And luckily deleting is much simpler. Again, users aren't filling out a form. They're simply saying, yep, I wanna delete this. And it, we just remove it from our database. All right, so delete's gonna be a post that we're gonna make. So let's kind of flesh that out. So I'm going to create a new page. I'm gonna call it book delete.html. Sorry, a new template page. That should go inside my pages folder. Right here, this is gonna be a very simple page. We're going to probably say in H1, are you sure you want, call it book, add a title, book.title. So I'm gonna assume I'm passing something called book to this page. And then I'm going to have maybe a form method would be post. And this form will simply have a button that will say delete book. Type will be submit. And let's say a label. And say, are you sure you want to delete book.title? Okay, so we just have a label, a button. Let's say they don't want to. We could have a button that links to the back to the page, I guess. So we could have a button that will take them back to the detail page. So in this case, I'll do href equals %. So this will go back to the book detail. So I think it was book detail is what I called it, I think. Double check. Yep, book detail is what I called it. So here, this is just, again, just an optional thing. I'm just gonna have them, if they cancel as in they don't want to actually delete this book, they can go back to the book detail page. That'll be book.id. So cancel. And this would be delete book. All right, so they have two options. If they go to this page, if they hit delete book, we'll actually delete it. If they hit cancel, they'll be redirected to the book detail page and nothing else will really matter for us. All right, so we post, submit. They don't have to fill anything in this form. There's no values we're capturing. It's basically a yes, no. If they hit delete book, we're assuming yes, they approved us deleting that item. So let's go to our URLs. I'm going to add a new route. And surprise, surprise, I'm going to call that delete. I guess you can call it destroy, but for delete, name route will be delete. All right, so we need to add one more handler. It's gonna be called book delete in this case. Let's go down here. Def book delete. This takes in two parameters. And you always take in an HTTP request. And then we're gonna get that book ID from the URL again. Hopefully you guys all understand how this parameter is being passed. We're capturing it in the URL via this parameter. Django, this is Django specific. It's saying, okay, you want me to capture this value, store it in book ID, and pass it to our handler of book delete. So we're saying, okay, cool. We're gonna expect book ID is gonna be passed to us here. So given that, we could do our try So we should do this as a post. We'll do the get first. All right, so in this case, we simply want to check if it's a get request. Just copy and paste and this save a little bit of time. If it's a get request, meaning they're just navigating to the page, we want to show them my data. So my data equals book, and our book instance, and we want to return a rendering. It's going to return render. The request object goes first. That's the parameter we had to pass. Second is the name of our template. In this case, mine is called pages/book _ deletes, right? .html. And the last parameter is going to be our context, or the data we want to pass. So my data is the name of my dictionary. So I'm going to pass this dictionary to my template page. Right? Notice that my value is called book here. So again, look at my book delete page. I'm able to reference book.title because title is a field of a book object. Same thing with book ID right here. That is a field that I can access off the book object. So that's going to allow me to pass that book ID to the book detail page if I want to navigate to that. Questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
I'm a lot more clear on how the URL is made now. And I get that the, let's say, book ID is getting passed into the URL from the function that you're making in the views file. But how does the user do that? Because I notice when you go to the actual page, you're changing the number in the top bar where you put the address. But how would a user do that? Do you have to have something on your page that say like which book would you like to change or what have you?
Yeah, I think I see where you're getting at. So I am not actually entering in the number. I am modifying the URL for other purposes because I did not put in links, but normally a website would have proper links where the user should never have to modify the URL to get to pages. So to kind of review that. So this is my homepage, right? When I click on, let's say Charlotte's Web, notice I'm automatically taken to /4, right? So again, yeah, in that case, I'm not manually entering it, but yes, I was entering /update. And then now I get to the update page. So normally speaking, also for like the new case, right? I type in new. Normally speaking, you want to have proper links. So I kind of just like was lazy about it. But here, I probably want to add a button that says add a new book, and that would take me to the new route, right? So let's actually do that quickly because that's kind of how web pages should be. So let's just add in our footer. Or let's add it in our nav. Not there even. I'm just going to squeeze it in here. So maybe put an HR in here because I love HRs. Another HR for fun. And then here, I'm just going to add a simple button like we've done before. A tag, button tag, add new book. Again, this will just be simply routing us to that new page. So we'll do href equals string. And the syntax definitely gets a little wonky, but hopefully you guys can bear with it. So again, we're using Python in between the string here. So the URL function, the route is going to be book creates, right? Because that's what we want to do here. We want this button to take us to the create route. Again, we don't know that specific URL, and that's the whole point of using the URL function so that, you know, if this create route changes, our template never needs to change. In this case, there's no additional parameters, so you don't need to add anything else here. Versus here, for the detail case, we need a specific book ID to go to that URL, right? The book detail handler needs to know what book to go to, but the book create doesn't need an ID because again, we're creating something new. So we do it this way, refresh, right? Could add a new book. Yep, now we're taken to that page. So it's all about adding proper navigation. Again, I've been kind of lax on it, so hopefully you guys can forgive me. But yeah, here we can create a new book. We go to dinner items. We should have a button here that says update, and we should have a button here that says delete. Let's actually do that because it doesn't take too long. Update, detail. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy and paste to save myself some time. Copy that, go to my book detail. Maybe put it up top to be consistent. I'll put it at the bottom. We have HR. All right, so we want to update maybe. That would take in a book ID. That update book. And then probably need a break line. And then we want to also delete the book. Yep, so this will save us from having to modify the URL directly. Susan, did that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, that makes sense now.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for asking again. Proper design is fairly beneficial to the user. Yeah, you don't want your users modifying the URL. That is not a good design website. So let's refresh this. Page not found. That's not good. Is my server down? No, server's up. Oh, so we got some error messages. Great. So notice book update with arguments not found, one pattern tried. So this is just saying we did something wrong with our URL here. So it looks like book update, book ID. Oh, because my value was called B. Remember that time where I said I want to use B instead of book? That is my bad. So I need to make sure my variables are the same. So in this case, B is the instance I'm passing because for whatever reason, before launch, I decided not to use book. That's totally fine. You're naming these values. Just gotta make sure you know what you're naming them. Lesson learned there, but let's launch our server. Okay, looks like everything's good. Let's try that again, refresh. Cool. So now we can update book. We could change it to like 59. Cool. I guess here I would probably redirect to the detail page. I think that's what the curriculum does. So again, I'm manually editing URLs, not the best. If I want to delete book, all right, now I'm taking to my delete page that I just created. Book dinner items. Are you sure you want to delete dinner items? I could delete book. This is going to submit a post request back to this URL. If I hit cancel, that cancel is kind of a redirect. It's going to take me back to the detail page. If I hit cancel, oops, looks like I forgot my CSRF token. Happens to the best of us and even me. So go back to my deletes. Good lesson, unintentional lesson, but still a lesson. Always have your CSRF token inside of the form. CSRF token, again, just a security thing, just take it, just accept it that you need it. I know there's probably very detailed information on why that's, how it works, why it's necessary, but I'm just gonna say, just remember to add it if you guys are fine with that. So given that, let's refresh. Let's go back to our book. Okay, so I want to delete book. And let's say I changed my mind, I'm gonna hit cancel. Looks like I did not code that up. All right. So we did our get request, but it looks like when I hit cancel, what's going wrong? So I want to go to book detail, book ID. All right, not sure what's going on there. Book detail.
And you still need BID?
In this case, I'm passing book. So
That's
if I look
book
at
delete.
my views, skip that. I'm passing book here. I passed B up here for some reason for my here. So my detail page is referencing B, but my delete page is referencing book. Again, you want to be consistent. So this is a bad example, but let's try to figure this out. So I'm calling URL book detail with book ID. That looks kosher to me. But it says, look at my error message. It says book app views book delete did not return an HTTP response. So I'm probably not returning something. So yes, this is what happened. I'm submitting a post request here, but I never handled the post request. So take a look at this. I should probably move this button outside. So that should not be in my form. And then I also need to code up my post request in case they actually submit it. So let's do that quickly. And should be good. All right, posts, we just want to delete it. And that's actually really simple. So in this case, we'll redirect somewhere. Let's redirect to the home page. Redirect, I'm gonna need to look up the syntax for that. So return, redirect, yada, yada. List. All right, so if they want to delete it, we simply do book, book dot objects dot. I always screw this up. Can I just do a delete with an item? Do I do it a get? Things like that should work. So we use the book ID, we get it, and then delete it. I think that's right, but not 100% sure. This redirect is a Django function, so we need to import it. So we go up here, redirect, cool. I think there is one step that I'm missing here. So definitely don't want to go too quickly. This redirects. There's some specific syntax here. The first part needs to be your app name. All right, so it's not books. My book app is book app, but I think there's one additional step. So I'm going to test this out to make sure I know what I'm doing correctly. So let's go back to our page. All right, so if I want to delete my book, I can hit delete book or I can hit cancel. If I hit cancel, I should be taken back to the detail page. So let's verify that. All right, cool. I'm back to my dinner items book. Let's go back to delete book. Now when I hit delete book, ideally, we should delete the book from our database and we should redirect to the home page because we don't have any specific book page to show. Delete book. There was an error. Got it. The error, I'm guessing, is from here. So I want to see if my book actually got deleted. Yes, my book got deleted, but my redirect was bad. And this is because I need to go to my URLs. And this is kind of just random, I would say. But you need something called app name equals books or book app, or what do you want to call it? So again, this name does not necessarily need to match this name. So if I call it books with 3 Z's, I don't know why, but that's what I call it. I can use books down here, pretty sure. So let's try to verify that. Let's go to lunch items because lunch is over with. Did I delete all my items? Oops. Looks like book crate is not a valid view or path name. That's not good. Book create is definitely there. Okay, so we're trying to do our book detail page. Let's take a look. So book update, that looks fine. Book delete. I screwed something up here. So I can't find any of my pages. Did I change something in my views? Oh, I bet it's because my app name. So maybe I lied there. So URLs, let's make that my app name because maybe that's what it's looking for. Book app. Thought you can name it whatever you want. So now we need to look more on that, but book app. See if that makes it happy. All right, maybe that's what I need. Nope, still not working. Oh, I know what. So since I added an app name, I think I'm onto this. So app name here, let's still make it books with a Z. All right, so if I name it here, I need to actually update all my relative paths. So here, you need to prepend with the app name, books. I think I'm going down a line that is not required, so probably confusing you guys, but since I added an app name, I need to prepend all my route names with an app name and a colon is what I'm kind of dealing with right now. Now, I think this step might have been optional, so I might apologize ahead of time, but I think in my redirect, I could just put a name. I think that's what threw me off here. Let's see if this works out. So if I call it books, all right, that seems fine. Can I refresh it? Okay, now it works. So since I add a name, let's make sure we're clear on what I screwed up. Since I added an app underscore name, this is a predefined variable, and I named it books with 3 Z's. Now that I have an app name, all of my route names are going to be prepended with that app name. My question might be, why did I do this? I don't think I needed to, but there might be cases where it might be necessary. And now let's kind of go through our motions. So lunch items, delete book, yes, delete it. Okay, notice that got deleted. All right, let me get rid of this app name because I think I went down the wrong path. We don't need an app name for redirecting. I'm pretty sure we should be good without it. So while I'm undoing my snafu here, any questions about deleting an item?
I have a question about the app name. Do we give things app names because sometimes we're going to have multiple apps within a project? Is that the
Yeah.
reason?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you had multiple routes, like route names might kind of conflict, and yeah, you might be referencing a route name from a different app. I think that is, yes, why you might want to specify the app.
Okay, but when we only have one app name, that's the reason why you're doing it this way, because there is only one app in this project.
Yeah,
so
so I
it's
was
not going to
looking-
get confused.
Yeah, I was looking at the curriculum and it looks like it had these books. Let me look at the URLs, just make sure. Yeah, so their URLs had an app name here. I don't think that's required. I'm going to verify that by doing a redirect with just book list. And book list is my right here. I want to see if this works. If it doesn't, then maybe the app name is required. So refresh. There's an error. Yeah, so it looks like I can't just redirect. Is that my issue? What if I return? That makes it happy. Index. Ah, right here.
Ankur, did you have to import redirect?
Yes, I had to import redirect. Redirect is coming from shortcuts, Django shortcuts, redirect.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for asking. All right. So I think everything's working. Delete was my only question. Delete book. Delete book. Yeah, that works. Well, my redirect, does that work? All right. I'm just cleaning up my code here, but any questions? Did I speed up too fast there? Redirect. Again, I want to go to my book list. Let's see if I can do that without an app name. So let's go back to my homepage. Books. Let's get rid of DSSSS. Delete book. Delete book. All right, that works. So yes, app name. It looks like you don't need it. So our curriculum page does have it. I think it's just being a little more descriptive, where you add an app name in your URLs. That means anytime you are calling a named route, you need to prepend it with a colon. This is true for your template files and for within your views files.
Okay,
Right.
it's probably a good idea to do it because typically you're going to have more apps, right?
I wouldn't say typically, but yeah, I think it's good practice just to have something that's more specific. I don't say I always do it. Obviously, I'm kind of rusty on it, but it doesn't hurt, I would say. It makes it a little more clear what route exactly you want to call.
Ankur, I'm sorry, instead of that redirect, could you just do another render of the page you want to go to?
Yeah, you could, but I would say that's kind of redundant code at that point. It's minor, but yeah, you could render that page, I guess.
Thanks.
Yeah, we could try that. So if I wanted to copy it, yep, if you want to just render book list, page index, I guess. But again, just to highlight, I'm sure this is kind of obvious, but this works. This should work. Let's verify that. I don't have data though. Yeah, in this case, yeah, this would actually not be quite kosher because now we need to get all books again. So all books, and you can kind of see we're writing redundant code at this point, right? We're essentially going to do everything that our list, like we're going to do all three of these steps again, right? And that's the whole point of writing this function, right? So yes, you could, but you probably shouldn't because you want to reuse functionality.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Fair question to ask. All right. I think that covers our CRUD, right? We did create, we did, I guess we did read first, then we did create, then we did update, then we did delete. Again, you're updating and you're creating are usually the hardest parts because you gotta use a form, you gotta actually, make sure you update data correctly. This should be redirects. All right, what questions do you guys have? I know there's gotta be some questions out there.
Can you repeat again when you should use that app name and when you shouldn't, or when you don't need to?
So app name, I will say, is mostly optional. So here we could call it whatever you want. If you do specify an app name here, then all of your name routes, whenever you refer to them outside of this file, need to be prepended with your app name, colon, and then route name, whenever you refer to it. This is true for your template file. So here, notice I don't have any prepending app, but if I did specify the app name, I would need to add my app name, colon, and then the route name. To answer the question of when do you use app name and when you don't, Kind of what Guillermo said. If you have multiple apps, then you do want then you want to specify app names just to make sure that you know exactly what route you're going to. So example, in this case, I have a library. Let's say I had a books project or a books app and a videos app. What if my videos app wanted to navigate to a route from my books app? I'll do that via the app name. It might be possible to just have unique names. Again, I've not tried it because I've not really created too many projects with multiple apps, but for the most part, I don't think you're going to need the app name, but you might see it. And if you do see it, just know that it's going to force you to update all of your route names by prepending your app name if you do code that way.
Thank you.
What other questions you guys have?
Is there like a recommended like approach or method, like when it comes to like, so when we're doing this on our own, like should we reference back to like the README files, like for the like curriculum for that day, or watch like the way, because I know you like try showing us a few different ways of doing stuff, and it's kind of hard to keep track of like what method to use.
Yeah, again, I apologize that on the app name, I guess alley that we went through, that was totally unnecessary. I just got confused by the curriculum page. But I guess Daniel, if I could redirect the question back, was there anything specific that kind of was confusing if I did multiple ways or kind of went too fast over it?
Honestly, I think just the whole post lunch kind of lost me. So I don't really have anything specific, but
okay,
I'm just trying to figure out how I'm gonna like what I should focus on like this evening when I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I don't have a great answer, but I'd say just take it step by step. Like I always start with the create method, just get that working. And so let's just kind of review all the work we've done. So go back to views. Let's look at our create, make sure we understand all the steps here. So for our create, or sorry, let's back up even more. So first thing I want to do is my homepage. Homepage is simply listing all the books that we have. So if I go to my views, there we're simply making a request to the database. In this case, I've decided to sort by the title. So I guess it's an order by here, kind of if we're writing SQL, but we're not writing SQL, so that shouldn't matter. But we basically retrieve all the books from the database, create a dictionary with key value pairs. The keys are anything you want to name it. Again, these are just variables you're going to be referencing inside your HTML templates. The values are actually what you want to pass into that variable. So in this case, I created something called books and heading. Therefore, if I look at my homepage, I have access to something called heading, also access to something called books. Again, we could reference, we're using Python variables within HTML, so it's kind of unfamiliar territory, but that's the whole point of Jinja. It allows you to write Python, kind of embed Python within your HTML. All right, so after we did kind of our reading for our index, which is our listing everything out, we also did our book view page or book detail. I'm not sure why I call it book view, but this is essentially the same thing, but in this case, we get a particular book ID that we want to view detail for. How does that work? Well, looking at our URLs, our book view, or sorry, our book detail route is handled by book view. We are capturing a value from the URL into this variable book ID. So again, if I go to books and like type 5, not 5 update, go away, 5. All right, so if I go to 5, it's actually going to capture that 5 from the URL and it'll be passed to my book view handler. So now this value will be 5. So I know that I want to view specifically the book ID with 5. So we're able to extract that from our database, populate our dictionary, and then pass that to our template page here. So now our template page knows everything that this book has to offer, such as title, number of pages, even the ID of it, because that is a field on the model, right? So title is a field, pages is a field, ID is kind of like an implicit field that exists from model.model. All right, so we did our reading. The hardest parts were create. So again, hopefully you guys understand the get request and post request. Again, it's not something trivial, but you understand there's different ways to access the same route. If you make a get request, it's usually just saying, hey, I want to just see the data. Can you get it from me from the database? So we, create some data and just give it back a web page. The post, however, is modifying data in the database, right? We're actually taking values that the user entered via this post dictionary. So again, request that post is a dictionary with data values. those data values are automatically captured from what the user entered. So if I go to update book, if I type, new title, this data that I'm entering here is automatically or automagically going to be captured and stored in this request.post dictionary. Again, it's a dictionary that has fields on it. If you actually want to see, you can debug and see what values are in there, but they're just going to be, the keys are going to be the names of your field. So if you look at my models, the keys will be named title and pages, and the values will be whatever the user wrote in there. So in this case, new title and 55 would be the values in that dictionary. You don't have to worry about that too much when you're using model form. So model form allows you just to pass in that dictionary straight up into your model form. So then the form instance will have those new values in there. Once we have those new values, we need to validate them, make sure that we didn't get invalid values, whether they're blank or if we had specific validators like, hey, the book title must have at least 5 characters. If that was part of our requirements, is valid would trigger all those validators, assuming that all of them pass. We would save that instance to the database because they have created a new item. Updating essentially is the same thing. The only difference is we have a specific item we want to update, right? When we're creating, we don't have anything to work with. We're creating something new. Updating means we're updating something that already exists. So it should already have a book ID associated with it. That again is coming from the route. So when we go to update a specific book, right? When I click update book, notice we still have that 5 in here, which is the ID, the book ID. So for our book update, we get a book ID passed to us. We get the book instance from the database, and depending on if we're doing a GET request, as in just navigating to the page, or responding to a user input, we do stuff a little differently. In the GET case, we simply render the form and show it to the user, hey, fill this out. In the POST case, we actually take their values, right, from the POST dictionary, we validate it and save it, and then we give them some informational message. In this case, I'm just saying you updated a book. We could easily and probably should redirect to somewhere else. So redirect to book detail, and then we want a parameter. How do we do this? I think that's the way you do it. Let's give that a try. Meanwhile, while I'm trying to mess around with this, any other questions? Dan, I don't know if that answered your question. I know you're asking kind of what's the best way to get practice with this. I'd say, yeah, kind of just go through our tutorial that we went through today, the tutorial Tom went through. I know it's a lot, but I think that's the best way to kind of get prepared for the challenges.
Yeah, for sure. Can you just share this project whenever you have a chance?
2 thumbs up. Yes, I will. So I posted the link already in the Papa channel during lunchtime for what I had. I'll push this up to my GitHub, but it'll be in the same location. So that's cool. In my personal GitHub, Django/library-lecture, I think is what I called it. Yeah, happy to put this up there in case you want to follow along. What other questions you guys have? Michael?
Yeah, okay, so you might have just answered this, but I just want to make sure I'm following. You said the request is a dictionary, is that correct?
Not quite. The request is a request object. Specifically, it is a HTTP request object. So this is a Django, this is a class that Django has created, and that when you go to a page, it submits an HTTP request that has all these parameters on it. So there's a body, there's a path, a lot of information.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm following. So it's got like a payload to it or something like that. Is there a way using the developer tools to look at that request, like all the stuff in that request when you click on the button in the thing? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just curious.
You can do it in your VS Code. You're asking, can I investigate it here? I don't know. Let's figure that out. So I want to go to update book, something new, 555, newer. I'm not sure. Tom, do you know?
Yeah, if you go to the network tab, you can see all the requests.
Gotcha. Okay, so if I hit update book, I got updates.
So if you click the update, click one of those, it should open up.
Yeah, I'm looking for a post somewhere. So yeah, it might be possible. I am not fully familiar. I know you can do debug in the Python side. Unfortunately, I'm not going to run through that right now because it's a little involved to actually debug a Django project with your VS Code. But there should be a way to inspect what you just sent.
Cool.
Oh, here
All
we
right,
go.
no worries. Yeah, I was just trying to get a better idea of like what that request body looks like, because it seems just a little bit mystical to me right now. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it a little bit more. But okay, I had a follow-on question, and I'm not sure if this question makes sense, but let's say we're working with a model where we have a one-to-many relationship. So let's say we have post and comments. So a post has many comments. Now let's say that I want to display the post on a page and show its comments with it.
We'll get to that tomorrow.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep. Yeah, I like the way you're thinking. Yeah, we're going to be doing that. That is what your assessment's going to be about. But yeah, that's the idea of nested CRUD, where you have like these routes will get nested. Yeah, again, it is the same thing, just kind of more levels of it. But that's a good question. You'll definitely see it tomorrow. To answer your first question, yeah, again, there is a way. So I went to network tab, clicked on the request. And then, yeah, so I can actually see the data that I'm sending. So in this case, the title is something newer. The pages are 5555. And so this is the HTTP request that's being sent over the network. Your Django project actually captures it and creates an instance of an HTTP request object. So it's basically mirroring the HTTP request data that's coming in, and it's just storing that into an HTTP request object within Python. But yeah, you can investigate it from this side, or you do have the option to kind of check, hey, what am I actually getting back here? You can investigate what request is. Your initial question, where's the dictionary? The dictionary is this post member of the requests that you're getting back. So this post item is a dictionary that has the data that the user entered.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah,
post
again,
is like
I could do something like
attribute of request. Okay.
Like I could, if I wanted to, do something like a print request. Where is it? Request. Again, this is a dictionary. So title is a field in it, just because title is a field on my model. There's some, again, automatic mapping going on there because your model form uses the same field name. So in this case, if I did request.post and then square brackets title, this will actually print out the title that I got from the user. So if I want to verify that quickly, anyone else have a question while I just mess around with this? So let's do newer with a bunch of R's, update book. Let's see what my console print out. Yep, notice I was able to print out that value right there. So that's the data is contained in that dictionary.
Thank you, Ankur.
Thank you for your question. What other questions you guys have about CRUDing in Django?
Can you print out .post.keys as well, just to?
Sure. Like that? Is that a function?
Yeah, that way it would all, I'm not sure if it's a function, but that way you can visualize any keys that are coming in.
Yeah, so we got dictionary of keys. So again, that CSRF token gives you some value that is used by Django. It's something that you need to worry about. But we also have title and pages as part of that dictionary. That's what I printed out here.
Thank you.
Good questions. Anything else? Anything that was unclear? Please don't be afraid to ask. Again, we're all here to learn. So if there's anything confusing, if I went over anything too quickly, I'm definitely happy to go over it a little more in detail. Okay, I'll take that pause as you guys are still digesting or you guys understood. But yeah, go through this tutorial. And then today's assignment is going to be sort of similar to what we done on Friday. Instead of event calendar, we're going to create a to-do list. So we had a similar challenge in, I think, HTML week and maybe something else. We're going to go through the same steps, create your Django project. Here, we're going to be creating to-do items. This is going to be one list that's going to have a bunch of items that you could add to it. So if I want to add a bunch of tasks, that's what my, I'm going to be adding tasks, I'm going to be updating tasks. Like let's say I want to do laundry, but then I want to do, 2 loads of laundry. I want to update the title. You should have the ability to add tasks, update tasks. I guess Also retrieve tasks. So obviously you want to see a list of tasks that you have already from the database. So in the past, I believe we did it with a CSV file, or sorry, I think we did it with local storage perhaps with HTML files. Now we're going to actually be storing that data in a database and retrieving it and accessing it for the user. Now this is better because we're persisting the data outside of the user's control. So if the user loses their local storage, well, we still have the data backed up in our database. All right, so simple to-do list. We've kind of created something similar before, and we're going to do it with Django. Again, you do all the CRUD applications. So be able to read your data, create new items, update existing to-do items, and delete items. All right, so that is your challenge for today. Also, make sure you go through the stuff on Friday if you didn't quite finish it. With that, I'm going to pause one last time for any questions about the schedule. Again, remember today we have a career coaching session at 5:30. We'll do stand down at 5. If you have any Django specific errors, please reach out in the pop-up questions channel. We'll definitely make sure we can help you debug. But with that,
Don't forget mock interviews.
Oh yes, mock interviews also, a lot going on. So mock interviews will be starting after 6:30 after career coaching session. Make sure you double check the spreadsheet. Definitely don't leave your interviewer hanging. So make sure you know what day you're going and what time. If you need to reschedule, as Tom mentioned, find someone else to kind of swap with, or let your interviewer know that you won't be able to make your time slot if you can't make it. Okie dokes. Any other questions? All right, I know it's been a long lecture day, so definitely we'll get you guys a break here. So take a break as needed, get to your challenges, reach out as you need it, and we'll do stand on at 5. Thanks so much, guys. I'll upload the video right after, but it'll take a little bit to process. I guess I didn't.